And you can see then if you scrutinize per province what that information is. If we move on to the next slide. For Free State, the Free State allocations are amber in funding. Otherwise, they have an overall, reflection of green. And this is due to we didn't receive funding from the province on the areas that are allocated in green. You will see that there are some areas that they need to provide information. They are still busy collating that information, and once we receive that, it will then change the way in which that part of the dashboard is reflected. If we move on to the next slide. In Gauteng is at a good overall state of readiness in terms of how they've reflected on their information. And there's just some small areas of data elements that are missing where you see the amber, and they are in the process of providing that information to us, which once it is received, it will change the status of those amber parts that we have indicated there. Moving on to the next slide then. So KwaZulu-Natal, we have indicated there is a problem with the LTSM. They are red due to the materials not being ordered, and this is because of the budgetary constraints in the province. And in the scholar transport section, they are amber due to outstanding payments to the current service provider, and it's again reflected on the funding problems that they are struggling with. Move on to the next slide. So Limpopo is looking good as well in terms of how they have managed to, give information. There are some areas that, a few areas that are, they still have to provide information on. It's in the scholar transport, and they've indicated they can only get this information at the beginning of the year. For instance, you'll see that one of the questions is, are all operators compliant with the safety and insurance requirements? They will run workshops at the beginning of the year, and then that will change. And then how many learners will be transported on the opening day? That number will be updated when the schools reopen, and then that will change those two rates on the information that they provide us at that point. If we move on then to the next province, Mpumalanga, again, we have explained about the LTSM that is red there due to the materials not being ordered due to budgetary constraints. And then the funding allocations are in amber as the data has not yet been provided to us. And once that information is provided on the funding, that could potentially change the amber to green for them. And what would make a difference on the LTSM is if they are able to resolve their funding, their budget problems. Moving on then to the next section on Northern Cape. So the Northern Cape also has LTSM that's reflected as red, and that's again due to budgetary constraints there. And then on the scholar transport, there are two ambers, and that's just information that they still have to provide. Once they provide that, the amber will then be able to turn to green. Moving on to Northwest. Northwest is also have an overall majority of green in terms of their status, and they only have to provide information on the ambers that they have to provide us in scholar transport. There's one question that we asked them, which is into 2026, and they will get that information when the schools reopen, and that would then help us to change that status, as well as the delivery of the textbooks, which is currently underway. They indicate they will also do the deliveries over the school holidays, and that by the time the schools are open, they will have that information. That moving target will also change once they submit final information to us. Moving on then to the Western Cape. So the Western Cape also has an overall green reflected here up until now. Again, there are common areas under scholar transport where they have to submit the information still, and they can only submit that when the schools reopen. And so that amber would then change to green there, and that will change, give us a better indication of the information there. That takes us to the end of the dashboard. This is just a slide that we have to give the status of the placement of learners. This gives you a reflection across all the grades in the country about the number of learners that have been placed. In a national picture, we give figures of the amount of applications that have been received, the number of applications that have been placed, and to date, the national picture across all the grades from grade R to grade 12, we have 140,179 learners that must still be placed. Of course, this is as at the 25th of November. So as we speak now, that figure has changed because they do placements and they, as some parents who have applied to more than one school finalize the offer that they are going to take, it opens up spaces in other schools, and so they're able to offer those placements then to other learners. Some parents choose to take their children out of public schooling. Some parents move away from areas to other areas. Some parents move out of provinces to other provinces. So all of these things is the movement that happens according to placement. And of course, the big challenge on the placement is that whilst this is our picture now, we have no way of knowing how many learners do rock up when the schools open, and that then always spikes the numbers in the unplanned placements that we have to deal with. And each year we are faced with that, especially in urban areas and especially in Western Cape and in Gauteng. If we move on then to the next slide, so this is just an update on section 4 and 5. If we move into that slide, this gives you an overall indication of the figures in terms of the various languages and what the province they have done in terms of accommodating various aspects of language and how it is being facilitated within the province. If we move on to the next slide, I'll give you the details of exactly what the slide reflects. So there is provincial diversity that is reflected in that slide that we just looked at. There's significant variation that exists between provinces in terms of former Model C presence and language policy implementation. Then there's on language evolution. The data indicates a nationwide trend of Afrikaans medium schools introducing English instruction, which is a good thing to accommodate as the movement of learners from different parts of the country who are not necessarily Afrikaans speaking. Then policy adoption. Most of the former Model C schools have completed admissions and language policies through though the data is incomplete for some regions, like for instance Gauteng, and that's just because of how the admissions is going currently in Gauteng. Then African languages, the integration of African language into former Model C schools is most prominent in KwaZulu-Natal, and engagement for change. There's an overall there's a number of schools that are being engaged to introduce other languages, and it is relatively low across provinces, but there is an attempt and an effort that it seems that is being made from the figures that are being shown. I'm going to hand this part over now to Mr. Raputapi. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geya. Good morning, Minister, Chairperson, DG, and members of the Portfolio Committee. So this part deals with the upgrading of qualifications of grade R practitioners. And just to indicate that the requirement of the BELA Act means that now grade R is part of the formal schooling, and therefore people who teach in this grade need to have the same level of qualifications as the other teachers. And so this part is meant to ensure that those who are already in the system and do not have the requisite entry-level qualifications are assisted to achieve those. So one of the first things that we had to do, of course, was to consult with our labor unions in the ELRC, and this led to the conclusion of a collective agreement 2 of 2025, whose purpose is largely to clarify measures for the upgrading of qualifications of these practitioners who are already employed within our schools. Also, we did reach an agreement with UNISA as the appropriate institution to assist us in this case. Firstly, based on the fact that it is using a distance mode approach, so they'll be able to work and study at the same time, but also in terms of costs, UNISA was much more preferable. So we also had a discussion with the ETDP-SETA, which agreed to allocate an amount of 66 million for the upgrading in the current financial year. But then there is also an agreement that we have with provincial education departments that they need to include the upgrading of grade R practitioners in their annual performance plans, because it is only when they have done so that the ETDP-SETA will be able to fund the further study of these provincial of these practitioners from their provincial allocations from the ETDP-SETA. So we have agreed with UNISA regarding these arrangements, and all identified practitioners who are eligible are expected to submit their applications to UNISA, and the agreement is that they will be required to apply for Bachelor of Education in Foundation phase. UNISA also indicated in our discussions with us that they are no longer offering the diploma in grade R, since as the department and the Department of Higher Education, we had indicated that the diploma in grade R had reached its stage of lapse, and therefore institutions were advised not to admit more new students into the diploma, since it was meant largely for upgrading. Those who do not qualify for BEd Foundation phase, due to the fact that they do not have they do not meet the minimum entry requirements into the BEd Foundation phase, these will be redirected into an upgrading qualification for a period of a year, which is the higher certificate in education. And upon completion of this higher certificate in education, they would then be eligible for enrollment into BEd Foundation phase. But this, of course, is those who have matric and are eligible for enrollment in this regard. So the collective agreement, as we have indicated, is meant to address the policy on minimum requirements for entry into the profession. So part of the agreement with UNISA was that because the applications at the time of our engagement were already closed, so we entered into a special arrangement with UNISA, which agreed to open applications specifically for this category of practitioners, and the applications were opened from the 1st to the 10th of October. That grace period has subsequently been extended further up to the 19th of December 2025. Next slide. So in terms of the process, we had an agreement with HEDCOM that grade R practitioners who are currently employed into the system are being paid stipends since they are not fully fledged educators. But those who were able to upgrade their qualifications, including those who were able to obtain a diploma in grade R, because when you have a diploma in grade R, then you meet the minimum requirements and you are regarded as a teacher. And so our agreement with the provinces is that as and when posts become available, those who have the requisite qualifications, those with diploma in grade R amongst others, will then have to be absorbed into the posts that become available. But those who do not meet the requirements then will be upgraded, as we have already indicated. And we have been working with provinces to identify those categories of practitioners who firstly are not eligible for upgrading and those who meet the minimum requirements for upgrading. And we have been liaising with UNISA in terms of ensuring that those who are eligible are also meeting the criteria that is set by UNISA in terms of admissions into the B.Ed program. Next slide. So as part of our engagement with provinces, we have conducted an audit, and the audit has indicated that there are 7,294 practitioners across provinces. But in terms of the criteria that we set, that we agreed to with the unions in terms of who will be eligible for upgrade and who will not, we came to the conclusion that 2,121 practitioners will be eligible for assistance in terms of upgrading of their qualifications. The collective agreement, of course, identifies other exclusions, and the exclusions include age, for an example, those who are over 60, because by the time they complete, they would not be able to render services. There are also those who don't have matric and therefore will not be eligible for admission into a university. So we verified the numbers, and 2,121 is eligible for upgrades. UNISA has now set up an application process, and this application process has been shared with provinces, and we are working with provinces to ensure that those who are eligible to apply do apply. We have been making follow-ups, and we were worried, of course, about the rate at which the practitioners were applying, and also considering the fact that the closing date was approaching. So we are grateful that UNISA has extended the grace period for the applications. And so we've undertaken as the branch to call all those practitioners and ensure that they literally submit their applications, and that process we are currently engaging in, and we are receiving a positive response in terms of the monitoring process that we have undertaken. So that's in a nutshell where we are, Chairperson. Thank you very much. I will hand over to Dr. Kotze for the next part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rabatapi, and good morning, Portfolio Committee members. I'll be giving an update on where we are with the Children's Amendment Bill. And just to start with some context, we know that children with developmental deficits are not always ready to take up on grade R. And that's why we care about early childhood development. And that's why particularly we care about expanding access and improving quality relentlessly. If we think of early childhood development, it's important to just understand the context of which ECD programs operate in. We get an array of quality ECD programs. And we've seen this in the recent Thrive by Five, that various modalities of ECD programs can provide very high quality early learning. And that's one of the key strategies that we have, is this mixed modality approach to expanding access. So when we use the term ECD programs, it can either mean center-based programs like the ECD center, which can be a purpose-built center, it can be a home-based venue, it can be a community-based venue, or non-center-based programs, which can be childminders, play groups, toy libraries, parent support programs, and so forth. And this context is really important, because this is essentially one of the elements that the Children's Amendment Bill is bringing into the sector and proposing to the sectors, is let's put these different modalities on statutory footing. We have contextually relevant norms and standards for them, so that we can rapidly expand access to quality. So the bill seeks to solve four key problems. So there's the problem of red tape that we want to resolve. There's the problem of overlapping mandates, especially with the Department of Health and the National Environmental Health Norms and Standards that we want to streamline. There's misalignment, where the bill was historically written for social development, or the act was historically written for social development. We want to bring a very strong quality lens to it. And the bill is currently leading to exclusion. There's this poverty trap, where the poorest ECD programs struggle to meet the very high set of norms and standards, and therefore cannot access funding. So if we move on to the next slide, we're just highlighting exactly how the bill is resolving these challenges. So in terms of the challenge of insufficient programs and limited appropriate infrastructure, the immediate unlock that the bill will bring is to really help us support home and community-based venues, so that we can rapidly expand access to quality early childhood development. The Children's Amendment Bill will recognize and enable support for a wide variety of different types of premises. The second challenge of having ECD programs that have variable quality, and that is where the bill is addressing that problem by putting the National Curriculum Framework for Children from Birth to 4 on statutory footing, and it's also provisioning, or allowing for provisions to really drive the quality narrative. We move to the next slide. The third challenge that we want to address through this bill is about enabling ECD programs in low-income communities that have been excluded to be able to register. This is where we will be streamlining the registration process, only have one set of norms and standards, and have norms and standards that's much more contextually relevant for the environments in which ECD programs operate. The fourth challenge is about the burdensome registration process. And how that often leads to the wasteful resources on government side, where we've got duplication happening between different government departments, and we want to streamline that to alleviate the burden on government departments. We will have one set of norms and standards, and especially when it comes to the roles and responsibilities of health, environmental health practitioners, we'll place the role of environmental health practitioners fully with them, and then as basic education, play the role of quality improvement. And that leads to the overlapping and duplicatory mandates as well. If we move into the next slide, just as a quick reminder what the key provisions in the bill contains. The first is having a single integrated registration process. The second is about having the National Curriculum Framework in statutory footing. The third is differentiating between different ECD modalities and having appropriate norms and standards for each of them. The third is streamlining the norms and standards so that they are much more aligned. The fourth is about having conditional registration clarified so that we've got a pathway to assist ECD programs into the funding stream. The sixth is about the responsibility for health and safety and placing that with municipalities. The seventh is about having a standard draft bylaw for ECD so that municipalities can all adopt the same bylaws when it gets to ECD programs. And the final one relates to regulations, where we are enabling the minister to issue regulations that includes assessment and monitoring. If we then look at just the process up to date, I think it's always really important to remember the history of this bill. This isn't a new bill that started with basic education. It was a bill that was originally drafted on social development side, and we had the benefit of a public consultation process. So when we inherited the bill, we already received it as a bill from social development with stakeholder engagement that happened with through a public consultation process. We then redrafted the bill with the input from health, COCTA, SALGA, and the ECD sector, and we published that bill for public comment, which was then the second round of public comments the bill went through. And the bill has now been improved internally. We're just awaiting final certification from the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor, and then we are hoping to take it to the cluster system early in the next year so that we can table it in Parliament by the end of this financial year. Just to go through all the consultations we've had, as I've mentioned, we've had extensive public consultations on this. In May, we had our public consultation session, but before that, even before when we received the bill, we received the bill with public consultation that led to 1,645 submissions, including almost 1,500 of them from practitioners and parents and caregivers. So we really do feel that this bill has extensively been consulted with public even before we received it. We incorporated all of that in the first draft. We then went on public consultation again. We consulted in all our internal structures. We had specific consultations with the Department of Health, with the Department of Cooperative Governance, with SALGA. If we go to the next slide, we also had specific engagements with the sector through our intersectoral forum on specific dates. So we've been quite confident, and we've been very grateful for a lot of input that we've received from the public to ensure that this bill is as contextually relevant as possible. We move to the next slide, just in terms of implementation readiness. If we look at this, the fact that the bill will help us increase access to registered subsidized ECD programs, the BELA mass registration drive has already helped us to alleviate the administration burden on our provincial education departments, which will enable them to have a lot more strategic support from district officers. Also, in the current MTF, we received funding to add additional human resources to our provincial and district staff establishments so that they can have more hands on deck in terms of the increase of ECD programs that's coming their way. In terms of monitoring the new integrated ECD registration process, we've completely digitized this process. So we've got real-time monitoring of happening that we can see daily. Where are the blockages? Where are the challenges? And we can intervene immediately. In terms of the resources required for the implementation of the bill, the only funding implication are on enabling provincial education departments for record keeping. And we, as I've mentioned, through the current MTF, we received funding to support the implementation of the eCares system, which is our digital data information system, and that will be the mechanism we use for the record keeping. And then to support ECD practitioners with the implementation of the NCF, our province is already training practitioners on the NCF, and we've also developed a minimum standardized implementation pack that we will be rolling out through our registration drive as well, so that all practitioners have the tools that they need to implement the NCF. So in a way, as the way forward, as I said, the bill has been approved internally. The moment we get our OXLA certification, we will take it to the social cluster. We've already submitted our SAYAS to DPME as well, and the moment we receive that, we can get the bill to cabinet, and pending approval, we can bring it to Parliament before the end of the financial year. In parallel, we'll also start the process of drafting the regulation norms and standards. It again will be a participatory process, so that once the bill has proceeded through Parliament, we're ready to have the norms and standards along with it. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Kotze. Thank you, Mr. Rabotapi, Ms. Geya, and Advocate Mshwanti. Thank you, Honorable Minister, Honorable Chair, and Honorable Members. We're done, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Thank you, Minister and the team. Honorable members, that was the presentation I think we must at least applaud the department for a very comprehensive presentation. I think it does give us serious information on the update in terms of the implementation of the provisions of the Act, and also a comprehensive update on the regulations process. I'm going to now open up and allow members to ask questions, but I want to request DG that whilst we are busy with that process, can the department just send us one of these requests for extensions that were made, especially the request from section 27, I think, or equal education, about a translation. Can you just send us the original request? You can send it to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, please just share it with us whilst we're busy with the questions session. I hope the department is in a position to do that. Minister, DG.
Chair, of course, we are more than happy to Advocate Ntranti can share that with Mr. Mahada, so it can be shared with the committee, the request for the extension from some of our stakeholders. As you say, Section 27 is the most notable one, because they the ones who asked. So we're more than happy to share that. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine. So let's go to the questions and clarifications and discussion session. Honorable members, I'm going to start with, so I see we've got other stakeholders. NAPTOSA has joined. So if there is any other stakeholders, we'll give you an opportunity to participate, perhaps after the session with members. So we'll give you after we are done with the engagements of members. So stakeholders, feel free to raise hands if there is any questions you want to ask, but that will be after the engagement with members. We're going to start with Honorable Law. Over to you, Honorable Law.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And let me welcome the department's presentation on BELA. I want to first start by saying, Chair, my first question will be, what are the specific concerns that were raised by Section 27, Equal Education, and other stakeholders that were warranted extensions of the public comment period? I would want to know, so that one is quite compelled, and maybe you would want to understand, is it not dealing with, just like you said, Chair, it's an interactive system. I don't know, do we ask a first question, did they respond, and then go to the second one? Yes, Chair.
Yes. That's how we'll do it. So you ask a question and we'll allow the department to respond, the second one, the third one, and maximum 4 questions.
Okay, I can come in here. So just so I can understand the process, each member will ask a question, and then we will be required to respond. And then they'll ask a maximum of 4 questions. Interact in terms of being an interactive session.
Yes, that's how we'll go.
Okay. So, Honorable Law, as I said, Advocate Ntranti can send the committee the request for an extension for public comments. But essentially what most organizations generally do is to say, look, they advance an argument that they would want more time. So the prescribed legal period for public consultation or a public comment is generally 30 days. And so they would ordinarily say, look, we would request the department to allow us either 60 days for public comments. And of course, when we looked at the request, we saw that it wouldn't be disadvantageous at all to allow more South Africans, particularly South Africans who are not necessarily engaged with the government gazette, to have greater say in the legislative making process. As I said in my opening remarks, I think, Chair, what's quite important is that South Africans must understand that the laws we make are theirs, and they have to have greater say in them. And so for us, as long as the delay wasn't with the department's drafting process, as long as the extension was on behalf of the public, our view was that if the public requires more time to have a greater say in their legislation, then there's no danger in allowing so. For instance, let me make an example with the regs on learner pregnancy. Those regs are even going to come to Parliament as an example. So there's really, the lawmaking is really that extensive, and so really we didn't see any problem with doing so. But we're more than happy to. They advanced specific reasons, but generally their reasons were around, can we get more time for public comment? But we're more than happy to share that documentation. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Law.
Thanks. On top of that, Minister, I would want to know if you have extended, what becomes the department's assurity to under-resourced communities for their meaningful participation beyond written submissions? What measures have you put in place to be able to make sure that for the underprivileged communities, how do we therefore make sure that they participate fully? Despite that, there's written questions I'd want to understand, and I'll move to other questions. Thanks.
Honorable Law, so look, I mean, for the executive's role in this is to, as you said, is to obviously make this available in the government gazette. If there are requests, for instance, in the presentation that we did, we referenced that there's case law in the presentation that was explaining why we had to accept the request for public consultation time on the draft regs. So the courts have made themselves clear around why it is important to allow further public consultation when there is a specific request to do so. But of course, the issue around public consultation and taking legislation to the people, so to speak, is in the realm of really the legislature, and less on the executive. But in this case, for instance, as you say, we've got an obligation to allow for written comments, and the assurance that I have that, at the very least we are able to get various comments on this is because, one, we've got these draft regs which are published, and then we get obviously the public comments, and then we have to go through this entire process again of taking in the written submissions from stakeholders, from the public, to essentially incorporate the inputs before we take it through to the state law advisor, before it's signed into law. So at least on our side, the public participation process is really documented, and we are really guided as to what we need to do. But I think when it comes to things like public hearings, going into communities, that's really in the realm of the legislature. Having taken part in that process myself some years back, I know that is definitely something that Parliament does and takes it quite seriously. So that's what we have done. Thanks, Honourable Law.
Thanks. I was meaning in terms of the departments, in terms of submission, Minister, but it's fine. I got you. I hope that you
can I add?
Under-resourced communities.
So, do you mind, Honourable Law, do you mind if the DG comes in here just to supplement what I've said?
Yes, I think it's important that the DG comes in, Minister, because your slide makes a provision to a case law.
Yes.
And it is quoted to say the state. Now, the state is both the legislation, the executive, and the judiciary. So as much as it is the lawmaking process and public participation, it's in our end. But what the court, and this is what your presentation say, what the court has said is that it is the responsibility of the state. So I think what Honorable Law was asking, which I also could not get the answer, is that since you've made an extension, how have you ensured yourself that the underprivileged communities actually participate in the process? So the issue of it's a role of the legislation. We hear that, but what, from your point as the executive, how have you ensured that the underprivileged communities participate in this process? So it's fine. We'll allow the DG to add, Minister, so that I think the question is responded to.
Thanks, Chair. DG?
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Honorable Chair, and Honorable members. There are two ways to reach out to especially underprivileged communities. The first way is through organized structures, such as our 5 teacher unions, the Association of School Governing Bodies, the professional bodies and interested bodies. We meet with them, we make them aware of this extension, and we provide the explanation and the information they require. The second way that we have used is QLTC officials, which are available through the 9 provinces of the country. They go out and reach out, especially to underprivileged communities. Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you very much, DG. Honorable Law.
Thank you very much, DG. Quite precise, and that's what I wanted to hear. The state law advisor requested translations into 2 official languages. I'd want to know what criteria guided the choice of languages, and will translations be expanded to other official languages? Because I would have heard in the presentation that you could have decided on the English and Afrikaans as the centered and structured language to be the one that are going to be effectively utilized to encode the message as to what we want to attain with regulations. I would want to know what was the criteria.
Thanks, Honorable Law. Advocate Ntwanti, can you come in here with regards to the translation services, please?
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Chair and Honorable Law. When we develop regulations, in fact, by extension the bills, we are relying upon the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor as the entity responsible for legislative drafting. There is a guide that is actually distributed to all government departments that assist government departments, but particularly the legal sections, on the legislative drafting processes. In one of their guides, as I've actually indicated in my presentation, is that a regulation is completely dependent upon the principal act. So the content and language used in the principal act should be extended to the regulation. So even when the regulations from Oxford were declared to be constitutionally sound, they said in their opinion, yes, we declare these regulations to be constitutionally sound, but reduced, in fact, they must be expressed into 2 official languages as per Section 6 of the Constitution under languages. Now, in their guideline, Oxley is saying, when you develop a regulation, it's in fact the term used is subordinate legislation, the same term as the regulation. A regulation must seek to achieve consistency with the language and content used in the principal act. In their guide, it's actually termed as enabling legislation. That's exactly what we follow when we develop these regulations, because we rely upon that office for legislative drafting guidance and where they could assist us where necessary. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Member.
Does that cover you, Honorable Low?
I'm not covered. Section 6 is covering 11 official languages. And then it says that it mandates that we should practically and we should use it to any other in the Act. Now, my question was clear to say, in the choice of languages, if we have chosen the two, what was the criteria utilized and what could have propelled these particular languages? Out of the 11 languages, wouldn't we have chosen any other language that covers the demographics of the country that seeks to say South Africa has 80% of Black Africans and 8 to 9% of our colors, and it has 4% of Indians and 8% of whites? Wouldn't we be practical and choose a particular language that is going to be favored in between the demographics of the country that BELA seeks to deal with in terms of reforms?
No, I hear you. Advocate Njonti, is there specific criteria that is used in terms of the translation services of a particular act or a bill in this instance? I think what the Honorable Law is seeking to understand is why the choice of these two. If it's something that's standard, then that's what we need to express. But I think what he's wanting to understand is why English and Afrikaans and not the other official languages. And I would need to lean on your understanding here of how these languages for translations are done.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honorable Law. As I indicated,
I think, Advocate, maybe also to assist so that you are able to respond, because I'm also interested in this answer. Your presentation makes reference to Section 6 of the Constitution. Now, you say to us there is a guide from the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor. You need to furnish us with those guidelines, because I would believe any guidelines created by the executive or the Office of the State Law, the Chief State Law Advisor, would be in line with the Constitution. Because your Section 6, as Honorable Law says, is correct. It speaks about the official languages being 11. But there's a section 2, the subsection 2, which is very important there. It says, recognizing the historically diminished use and status of indigenous languages of our people, the state must take practical and positive measures to elevate the status and advance the use of these languages. Now, what you are referring to us is Section 4, that national government and provincial government, by legislative and other measures, must regulate and monitor their use of official languages without detracting from the provision of subsection 2. So even if it says you must use 2 languages, it says you must not detract from subsection 2. Lastly, you are saying to us the initial act used 2 languages, but the processes of public participation, because it was done by Parliament, we translated the Act in all 11 official languages when we did public participation. I know that for sure as a fact. So maybe you need to make us understand about this guideline that you are referring to, and perhaps really tell us how is that in line with the provisions of the Section 6, because you keep referring to it. But the practice instead, for me, it doesn't really align with that Section 6 that is in the Constitution. So maybe I just wanted to add that so that when you respond, you also take that into consideration.
May I come in, Minister, Honorable Chair?
Yes, you can come in, Advocate.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. If I may be permitted, I'm actually reading directly from the opinion that we received from the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor when the regulation was declared to be constitutionally sound. If I may be allowed, just to read one extract at the conclusion. The Office of the Chief State Law Advisor advised us to say, we wish to draw the department's attention to the fact that in terms of Section 6.3 of the Constitution, the draft regulations must be published in at least 2 official languages. Failure to comply with this requirement will, in our view, result in the regulations being invalid. That's what the opinion is actually saying, after being declared the regulation to be constitutionally sound. I've already shared the guide that we use from the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor to Mr. Mahat as well as Ms. Nabangulu. I would wish to refer the portfolio committee to page 14, paragraph 6 of that guide, which stipulates that the regulation must be consistent with the language and the content used in the Principal Act. I'm not sure but I've shared the guideline already. I think Mr. Mahat will share it with the members of the portfolio committee. We are heavily reliant upon the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor and we take their guide and when it comes to legislative drafting. Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Honorable Law. That is your last question, Honorable Law. It's the last question.
Yeah, I'm not satisfied. I don't know what the opinion of the Chief Law Advisor is. It's not even answering us. It says at least 2 languages. It's not specifically saying these particular languages. And in an instance of the provision of the Constitution makes provision that says that whenever the departments make provision of the Act for non-English speakers and those who may not be proficient in the official language, potentially using regional languages, as per the demographics, it must make provision to accommodate those particular individuals. It should have a long-term linguistic accessibility to enhance public participation that seeks to accommodate those who are majority in the country, who are those who are 80%, who are the Africans, who should be able to be saying, at least out of what we've identified, we could have identified English and a particular language that is dominant to also make sure that as we translate and as we move, we cover up and we are equitably dealing fairly with word translations and we reflect a linguistic demographic that is targeting our audience equally and fairly so. I'm fine, Chair. That's my submission that I want to do. Can I get to my last question?
Sorry, Chair, if you don't mind, I think perhaps we may have missed a point here slightly. Yes, we take guidance from the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor, but the problem that we have is that the actual Principal Act was done in English and Afrikaans, and therefore the regulations have to then be published in English and Afrikaans. So that actually is probably the original sin here, that the Principal Act was published in those 2 languages, and therefore what we are now constrained by, and I completely accept what Honorable Law is saying, but what we are constrained by is that the regs now have to follow the languages that the Act was published in. So I take the point that he's not satisfied with the response, but I thought it was just important to add that point, that we are constrained by the languages that the Act was published in, and so then the regs have to come in into those 2 languages. Thank you.
Okay, Chair, thanks. Can I go to my last question? My last question,
Honorable Law.
Data and research shows that low levels of African languages integration in formal Model C schools. I would want to know what specific incentives or enforcement strategies will the department introduce to accelerate the multilingualism in our schools. Thank you, Chair.
DG, can you come in here, please?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister. Again, we've done 2 things. We've brought in the incremental introduction of African languages in former Model C schools. We can provide data, Chair, to your Honorable Committee as to how many former Model C schools have adopted which African languages and at what level. We have that information, we'll make it available to you. The latest strategy that we are implementing is mother tongue bilingual-based education. There is traction from previously disadvantaged schools and including former Model C schools. But that is fairly new. We've started it this year, but the data we have, it's in the incremental introduction of African languages, which we call IOL, and we can make that data available so that you see how many former Model C schools have introduced African languages and at what level. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, and Honorable members.
Thank you, DG. The next member is Honorable Sharif.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Good morning to the honourable members, to the Minister and her team, and of course to the Basic Education team. Thank you for your very in-depth presentation. Chairperson, my first question is going to be around admissions. Now, we know that there is specifically a large number of unplaced learners in Gauteng. It's 82,140, making up the bulk of the 140,000 unplaced learners. Now, from what we understand, in Gauteng, the application system closes completely. So no one can make new applications after the deadline that was provided. Now, the first question is, Chair, I'm already getting questions and queries and complaints around placement and admission, specifically in Gauteng, specifically around the system. So, for example, I had a parent reach out to me that says, listen, I tried for 2 schools. Now that the system is closed, I can't do a third school, which basically means her child is now unplaced and doesn't have a school for next year. So I would like to understand, the first question is, what can the department do to assist us as members of this portfolio committee to raise all of these queries? Because, Chairperson, we are going to be inundated with queries, especially in Gauteng, around the lack of placement. So what steps or what provisions is the department putting in place that will be able to assist us in ensuring that learners are placed? Thank you, Chair. That's my first question.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask Ms. Gea to come in here, please.
Thank you, Minister. The person that would be able to give us the information is Mr. Ndlebe. If he could just specifically respond to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and members of the committee. Good morning, Minister, DG, and colleagues. We note the large number of unplaced learners in Gauteng, but let's indicate that Gauteng was the last province to open up its admission processes, something that we have raised with them from the beginning, that they were starting very, very late. So the numbers are indicating the slowness in them having to place learners, which they are beginning to do now. If you go through their systems, it does indicate a large number of responses saying it's still being processed. So these learners are just hanging without having been placed due to some glitches in the system, and we know they are going to be placed not long. There is no province that is allowed to close an admission process forever. It opens for a period of time, and then it opens up again for late admissions and all that. And when that is settled and the schools reopen, then the process continues. But the most important question is that of Honorable Sharif that says, what happens if a parent does not have a school in all provinces, not just in Gauteng? And this is where we make ourselves available as the DBE to be the link between the parents and the provincial education departments. We collect this information on a daily basis from individual parents or in the community. DG is one of those cell phone number that is very, very busy. He gets as many WhatsApp messages about learners that are unplaced. Not that we're encouraging that, but we receive them and we communicate with provinces and we facilitate their admissions. So they should not be left alone. The department is there to assist. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sharif.
Chairperson, that was a good answer, but are you saying then that we must send the parents the DG's number, because then the DG will be inundated? As a suggestion, Chairperson, if you allow me through you, can the department submit to Llewellyn a email address or a dedicated person that we can speak to directly when it comes to admission? Because the parents are stressing out. It's December now. There's nothing really moving, and they are completely stressed out. So if that could be made available to us. Chair, my second question is, again, in terms of submissions for learner admissions at public schools that are set for the 5th of December, the presenter said it will be extended. Can you just tell us when it would be extended to, and will it accommodate the Afrikaans translation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think the proposal by Honorable Sharif is quite proper. Do share with us the email addresses where parents can, because we are all receiving a lot of complaints and issues about admissions from parents.
Yeah.
Let's go to the question then.
Chair, thank you very much. I think Honorable Sheriff is right. These things are always obviously quite difficult because so we receive quite a bit from provinces, and of course provinces have their own processes, but what I can undertake that we can try and do is to perhaps send the portfolio committee some kind of SOP of, if we receive queries from parents, this is how we will direct them to the relevant provincial person. And then what we can also try and do, DG, is to try and get the relevant provincial people and those people who are dealing with admissions, because I think, as the honorable members are saying, you know, they are, as public representatives, they are getting inundated with people and their queries. I certainly am too. You know, people are complaining about placements, and so this and perhaps, Chair, if I can abuse this moment just to say that, you know, as we indicated in the presentation, the admission numbers are forever a moving target. You know, when I was pushing the department hard on essentially being able to stipulate where are we exactly. I mean, there are some provinces that will probably double the number of learners that are unplaced as we have them now. So the point I'm trying to make is that we do need to somehow on our side try and do better in terms of responding to public queries. So if the committee would allow, Chair, that we just go back and we kind of work out a system on how best to do that. I would not want to commit the provinces to anything right now, but the DG and I can discuss it and see how best can we direct public queries, because as you are all receiving complaints, so are we, as certainly so am I, and people are frustrated. So I do think we need to do better as a sector in terms of how do we communicate better with the public. So if you will allow us to go back and work out an SOP, we'll make sure that we share that with Llewellyn, so then that the committee has it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I did ask my second question around the extension of the submission to the 5th of December for learner admission, and when it would be extended to accommodate the Afrikaans translation. I didn't get an answer for that, Chair.
Can we respond to the second question of Honorable Sharif?
Thank you, Chair. DG, can you come in here? Mr. Mweli?
Sorry, Minister, I battled a little bit to unmute. I suppose it's directed at Mr. Rabotapi about ECD practitioners. And Mr. Rabotapi could then help us to respond, Minister. If I'm right, Honorable Chair.
Mr. Rabotapi, can you come in quickly?
You need some.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Okay.
Clarify, sorry, I'm so sorry. It's learners admission in public schooling, just so that you have exactly what we're saying, because in your presentation you say that it will be extended. And so I want to know, when will it be extended to, and will it accommodate the Afrikaans translation?
So you mean sorry, Honorable Sheriff, I think I'm misunderstanding, and so I think I'm directing to the wrong official. So you are saying that in terms of school admissions, by when will we extend it to, or are you talking about the translation of the legislation?
The legislation.
No, the Honorable Sharif is speaking about the regulation on learner admission.
I see.
If there is going to be an extension, and if it is going to be translated into Afrikaans.
I see. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was very confused. So Advocate Ntwanti can come in here. Sorry, and I understand that the problem was my side because I misunderstood the question, so I was directing to the wrong person. Advocate Ntwanti, the translation for learner admissions. Do we have an indication of the timeline? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Once again, thank you, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. We've recently received the Afrikaans translated version of the regulations on admission as well as capacity. Just last week, in fact, admission on the 21st. What we're going to do is actually requested the Minister to extend the publication period until the 5th or 6th of January to allow for the translated version into the system, publication system. So currently, the publication period runs until the 5th of December, but we intend to extend it until the 5th or 6th of January to allow for the Afrikaans version to be in the system for at least a period of 30 calendar days. Thank you, Minister.
Honorable Sharif?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Chairperson. My next question is around the LTSM challenges. It is very concerning because we already have issues around LTSM now. If we have challenges with LTSM for ECDs, where does that leave us? So my question is, the Minister has written to the premiers, to the different premiers, to make sure that these are set for next year. Minister, what was the outcome from that engagement?
Sorry, I think I may have lost you. I lost the last bit, Honorable Sharif.
No problem, Honorable Minister. It's around LTSM, and yes, you have written to the premiers to make sure that these are set for next year. What is the outcome from these engagements?
Oh, I see. I heard. Yes, I think what I explained in the last meeting, honorable members, is that, when provinces say we don't have money for LTSM, for instance, I'll make an example of KwaZulu-Natal. And as we keep explaining to them, even in the CEM, is that there's no legal or financial instrument through which we as DBE can essentially provide money for them to do these things. And so it becomes quite important. And so I have taken on more of an advocacy role in helping them make the case to their various premiers to say, look, we can't get into the January 2026 period without things like LTSM. So for instance, provinces that are, from the top of my head, that are struggling with this is obviously KwaZulu-Natal, as the committee knows, but also the Northern Cape. While they're dealing with it, they've also had some issues in that regard. The Northwest seems to have dealt with the LTSM challenges. And so it would seem as though provinces are understanding that money has to come from them in their equitable share, especially now that there's been an adjustment budget. So I'm not going to stop, honorable member, to essentially make the case that we all have to be ready for 2026. There's no other way. And so some provinces and obviously some premiers are a lot more receptive than others. But as I say, we have to just keep pushing and making sure that we are as ready as much as possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Chair, through you, my last question, but it's also coupled with a recommendation. Let me give my recommendation through you, Chair. And of course, this is for the committee. I just want to put it out there for something to think about. Do you think it might be possible if we summon all of the provinces in early January for about a 3-day period to interrogate their state of readiness for the year? I think it will be important, since we know that provinces implement education education, it will be important to get them to Parliament so that we can find out what is their state of readiness, and if there's any recommendations we might have to make it to assist the provinces. So my last question is, you spoke about, the department spoke about providing, provinces providing the department with accurate and updated data, right? And a lot of the data, such as in Gauteng, hasn't been given. Now, we know that grade R is immediately realizable. We know that it's practical and it can happen. So my question is, what interventions or mechanisms has the department put in place to ensure that provinces give accurate and updated data? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'm going to ask the DG to come in here because he's done quite of the heavy lifting with this regard. I agree with you, Honourable Member, that we are only as good as what the data we have says. And that's why I've been quite clear this morning to say that this is a status update and not necessarily a declaration, because until I am convinced that we have all the data we need and that there are no data gaps, I cannot give the portfolio committee an assurance that nothing will go wrong in the new year. But the DG has been meeting with the HODs quite extensively as we've been pushing for this data to be submitted to us. So I think he can perhaps give some highlights on what he has done with the HODs. DG.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, Honourable Chair, and Honourable Members. There are a few things that we have done, Honourable Member Sharif. One of those is our own collection of data through EMIS, and we help to enhance the currency of that by meeting with districts, 75 districts, to verify the data that we have received. But not only that, we also meet with HODs from provinces, and then we present to them and we interrogate the data together. And more often than not, we do get them to go back, rework on the data, and enhance the currency of the data. It's work in progress. It has improved a lot, especially when we brought in the dashboard that we have presented to the Honourable Committee, because the dashboard forces them to go back and interrogate the benchmark that we have provided, because we'll be saying to them, we asked for information. This is the number that you have given to us. If we punch it into the dashboard, it places you at this level. And many of them work extremely hard to go back and try and get as much data as possible to make sure that we get very close to accurate. I can say, I've said it to the Minister, I'm much more comfortable with the data that we have now, given the various stages of validation and triangulation that we have done. And I also, Minister, welcome Honourable Sharif's proposal that even early January we could meet and say, this is what we presented to you in November today. What is the situation like at that time in December? And many of these numbers would have changed, as the Minister and Ms. Geya presented earlier on. But this is what we are doing. We meet with districts to verify what we have collected by EMIS. We also meet with heads of the department, and we also take this data to the Council of Education Ministers, where the Minister, Deputy Minister, and MECs look at the data and ask each province to confirm the data. And that's the means of verification we have. Apart from using artificial intelligence, we're doing head count now. We are done with the head count of learners. We are just doing some corrections with the head count of many of the educators. And Chair, I know you said we have to come back to you at the right time. And I think early in the year, we should be able to do that. And we're getting more and more information that helps to enhance our data. Those are the means of enhancing the currency of our data. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Mkadi.
Thanks, Chairperson, and greeting all protocol observed. Chairperson, the report states that 7,294 grade R practitioners lack the required NQF level 6 qualification, with 2,121 identified for further studies. However, the UNISA application process has faced delayed rejections and low response rates. Chairperson, what measures are in place to ensure that all identified practitioners are successful, enrolled, and funded? And how will the department guarantee that qualified grade R teachers are permanently observed into the system as a HEDCOM's approval, especially given the historical failure of some bursaries funded practitioners to complete their studies?
Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Chair. If I'm understanding Honorable Mkadi, it's about the upgrading. Ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Rabutabi, can you please come in quickly here?
No, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. So, in terms of measures that we are taking to ensure that eligible practitioners upgrade their qualifications, we have actually established a task team of provincial officials who are dealing with this category of employees and ensuring that they encourage them to take advantage of this opportunity to apply. But what we have also done is that we've created a database of all these practitioners, and we have asked officials as of last week to start calling each and every one of them to establish if they are experiencing any challenges, to also highlight to them the risks if they fail to take advantage of this opportunity. At the end, the responsibility is for them to tender their applications. We have made support available to them. We have given them information, and we are continuing to do so through our daily callings to ensure that by the time the deadline is reached, all those who are eligible to apply are actually able to apply. And then regarding the issue of the absorption of those who have already qualified, this is basically a matter that is firstly dependent on the availability of posts. The agreement that we have reached at HEDCOM is that as and when posts become available, these qualified practitioners will then be absorbed into those available posts. Unfortunately, the expansion of the post establishment will depend on the availability of additional funding, which at the moment is a challenge. Thank you very much, Minister.
Honorable
Yes, Chairperson. Kule part le yok observe othisha baka grade R. Kuthiwa mhla kuvela ipost I-grade R implemented 2021 une-budget yawo nayo i-primary ino-grade R about 3 ka-foundation ino-grade R about 3 abarejistiwe ngonyaka odlule bezongena la. For example, kuno-grade R about 3 kunothisha about 3 aba-qualified. Iyiphi le post efanele ivuleleke ukuze kuqashwe labo thisha aba-qualified already basesikoleni nama-qualifications abo. Ngicela ukuthola lapho ukuthi iyiphi le post efanele ivuleke ngoba vele banayo ibudget yabo yaka-grade R njengoba iyavuleleka 2021 u-grade R ukuthi awuze la ema-primary. Iy'ngane ikhona zirejistiwe, othisha bakhona ba-qualified, kodwa futhi kuthiwa kufanele kulindwe i-post. Iyona yiphi i-post okanye iyona yiphi imali efanele baholelwe ngayo ngoba i-budget ikhiphiwe. Ngiyabonga.
Okay, we've got interpreter, isiZulu interpreter. Can you please interpret?
Sivile kodwa Chair. Other members.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Then that's perfect. We can continue to respond then.
No, sivile ndiyamva Honorable Mgadi chairperson le ndlela athetha ngayo into yobana i-provinces kudala zi-implementa u-grade R even before i-BELA Act was enacted. Ingxaki esinayo honorable member is that nangona u-grade R when kudala incorporated to primary schools, the challenge is that when provinces were given a mandate and an obligation to implement compulsory grade R, zange ilandele i-budget in terms of saying here's an allocated budget that says this is dedicated for grade R. Zonke i-provinces unozibuza bayakuxelela into yobana they've had to absorb the cost of grade R into their current baseline. So asithi ke ngokubana sifolde izandla akho nto sizayenza, sithi ke ngokubana okay nangona ke kufuneke siye sayi-absorba kwi-baseline yethu u-grade R, but senza kanjani uqinisekise into yobana o-practitioner ba-qualified njengoba besitsho Mr. Rabothabi, and number 2 senza kanjani into yobana siqinisekise ubana they are remunerated at the level at which they must. Now, I think kubalulekile honorable members to state this into bana umntu who is a qualified educator, they must be remunerated at the level at which an educator has to be remunerated. But izasithatha ixesha ukufika kulo ndawo, and we are moving at pace as much as we can with provinces, but siyayicela loo nto le into bana to be understood ngoba kaloku nangona i-provinces sezideclarishile ne-basket of posts siyazama into bana they put a lot of emphasis on grade R2, the foundation phase teaching, but unfortunately ke kuba njengoba ndisitsho uba zange sifumane an allocated budget line item ethi le imali ka-grade R, it means into bana funeke sithathe ithuba efuneke lenzile to make sure into bana we get there. DJ, andazi if ukhona into endiyilibeleyo okanye engayitshongo okanye Mr. Rabothabi.
I think you've covered sufficiently, Minister. Thank you very much.
Right,
okay, cool.
Thank you, Honorable Mgadi. Your third question.
Ngiyabonga Chairperson. My third question, the dashboard indicates that learning and teaching support material are rated red in multiple provinces due to the budgetary constraint, and the school transportation is ABA due to the outstanding payments to serve providers. Given that only 50% of grade R practitioners have been enrolled for upskilling, and that 66 million has been allocated for qualifications upgrade. Chairperson, what concrete step is the department taking to ensure that that budget shortfalls do not continue to undermine foundational aspects of grade R delivery, such as learning material and transport, especially in underserved provinces?
Thank you, Chairperson. The honourable member raises a very important point, and that's why I think when we presented at the beginning, we said, look, the state of readiness is more than just about admissions. It spans beyond that. It spans to, are learners accounted for in terms of school nutrition? Are they accounted for in terms of scholar transport? Are they accounted for in terms of additional classrooms? And so the honourable member is raising a very important point to say, how do you deal with your fiscal, your dwindling fiscal envelope in the context of your deep financial issues when you have these kind of pressures? And we are trying very hard, and we will come back to the committee in perhaps even in the first quarter of next year to come and present to you some of what we are working with Treasury to try and really alleviate the pressure in the foundation phase. But it's just important that we work that out firstly with them so before we can come and present it to you. But Honourable Mgadi is right that the all of these support functions, whether it is scholar transport, whether it's nutrition, these things all matter in terms of admissions. They all matter in terms of delivering quality education for children. And so that's why even when I spoke in my opening remarks, I said there's this directive that we've issued to provinces so that provinces have to table, that we're not just tabling these reports in terms of PowerPoint presentations to you, that they become statutory reports that Parliament must receive on how far are you with the realization of this aspect of schooling. It's accounted for in the law, and starting from 2027, that will be available to the members of this House, because in our view, it's not good enough for them to just report back to us, but we think that it's important that they report to the House on some of the provisions of these things. So we're working with provinces, Honourable Member. We are monitoring some of the expenditure on the conditional grants. We're making sure that conditional grants, and we're monitoring to make sure that conditional grants are spent where they need to be. Where we are seeing deficiencies, for instance, my big anxieties around KwaZulu-Natal, where we are seeing issues, we are raising those things not only with just the MEC for education, but we're raising it with the MEC finance and the Premier, because as you say, the realization of education spans far beyond what happens in the classroom, but also about what happens, in the kitchen and in the transport. So we are monitoring the expenditure of those conditional grants and making sure that provinces are spending them well and in realization of what needs to happen. Thank you.
Honourable Mgadi, your last question.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Children's Amendment Bill 2025 highlights that the current two stages registration process creates red tape and excluded vulnerable children. During the public comments period, 1,645 submissions were received, with 1,495 coming from ECD practitioners and caregivers. How will the department ensure that the new single registration process under Department of Education oversights does not repeat the same inefficiency, and what specific mechanisms are being implemented to track and support home and community-based ECD programs that are currently marginalized? I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'm going to bring in Dr. Kotse here to because you raised some technical aspects at the end of your question. So I'm going to bring her in here to specifically stipulate what it is that we're trying to do with this bill. But to your point, as she indicated in the presentation earlier, what this bill seeks to do is, one, it seeks to embed the function of making sure that universal access to early learning programs
Is it only me who lost the minister?
No, Minister, and me as well.
Yeah, we've lost the
not me.
minister. Yes. Can we allow the department, the team to take over?
Honourable Chairperson, I'll perhaps come in here. I think the Minister wanted to hand over. Just to explain, so yes, currently the challenge that we face is the fact that there's two registration processes as the legislation is currently written, and that is exactly the challenge that the bill it seeks to address, is streamlining the process so it's one specific process, one set of norms and standards. And we've already been practicing that through the BELA mass registration drive by working within the confines of the current legislation to see how can we streamline as much as possible and start building that muscle of having a single registration process. What the legislation will do is just enable us to enhance this and streamline it much, much further. So we are quite confident that the current bill will address this specific problem by bringing the registration process with the two current chapters under one chapter, have one set of norms and standards, have one business process. And then the digital business process that we've already been implementing will help us to have a mechanism to track how this is going, where are the blockages, resolve blockages as quickly as possible. But I think through the BELA mass registration drive, we've already been able to understand how efficiently we can have a registration process and really reach the most vulnerable EC programs if we've got an end-to-end process with much more developmental approach to bringing EC programs in. Thank you, honourable members.
Thank you, Dr. Kotze. Sorry, Chair, I got cut off. I apologize, but Dr. Kotze did cover me.
Okay. Honorable Shkwambane.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to honorable members, members from the department, the minister, deputy minister, the TG. Chair, my first question will be around the issue of the submissions of the regulations. So, Chair, this reminds me when I was still at university, when I was doing my first year, I went to an accounting class. When I get there, I had my accounting textbook written in English. But the person sitting next to me, his accounting textbook was written in Afrikaans. So we've got two versions of accounting textbook in one class, one written in English, the other one written in Afrikaans. None was written in my home language. None was written in Sepedi. None was written in Sitsonga. None was written in Sivenda, Zulu, Swati, and other official languages. And the system continues to bring those memories to myself again. Today, the regulations were delayed for submissions because there must be a translation from English to Afrikaans and it ends there. And the minister, when she opens in her opening remarks, she tells us that she's a very good listening minister. The reason she accepted the request and also postponed the submission date, it was because there was a request that was made, and amongst others, the reasons that we're getting of the request was that let's have a translation of English vision to Afrikaans vision. And because this minister listens, she had to listen to the people that she's leading. And well, that is acceptable. But my question is to the minister and the department. In between today and the due date of the submissions of the regulations, if we get any request that come from any organization that seeks to say, can we have translations from English to other official languages in South Africa, the same way that we have afforded Afrikaans language the opportunity to do so? Are we going to accept that as the department, and the minister is willing to consider the request?
Honorable Chair, I take Honorable Shikombana's point and I take it to heart because he references something that is, I suppose a lot deeper and broader than what we are dealing with, which is the translation services here. And I would venture, Chair, to say it's something that we, as you said when you were defining what the state is, it's something that we as a state needs to look at, because if I even bring in Advocate Ntwanti here, I mean his response is going to be, because the act was published in these languages, we now have to translate the regulations in these languages. But I think Honorable Shikwambana's point goes far beyond that. He's not saying, he's saying, look, I hear your limitations, and I hear that you are now, confined by the delay in the translation services. But it's the broader point I think Honorable Law raised about what of the other 11 official languages. And I think it's something that even is not even confined to just the DBE alone, that we have to look at that as the state, as to what extent do we in our lawmaking process make sure that the language of and the styling of our legislation is such that the majority of South Africans can too understand what is being said. And I take the point, and I think it's something that we ought to raise with our colleagues at Justice, with Oxla, to say to what extent are we making sure that the lawmaking process is accessible to the majority of South Africans. And I think the point that Honorable Shikwambana is making is a broader one and less about, will you then extend if other people ask you for... The reality is that the only delay there is here is that we have to translate the regs in terms of what the language that the language that the act was published in. But I think your broader point about then why do we only publish legislation that you say, Minister, is for the people? Why do we only publish it in 2 languages when we have 12? And that for me is the broader point, and I think it's something that we ought to take to heart. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Chair, my second question is with regard to the funding in KZN and Mpumalanga. The presentation here shows us there's serious challenges, and we all know that there are challenges in terms of funding, particularly in Mpumalanga and KZN. They are highly affected more than any other provinces that we have in South Africa. But in one of our meetings here in the committee, when the minister was not in the meeting and we asked where is the minister, the members of the portfolio committee, particularly those who come from the DA, said to us, Minister went to meet with the treasurer to discuss the funding or crisis that is happening or that KZN finds itself financially. So she's going to lay out the problem to the treasurer and perhaps maybe try to get some funding from the treasurer to assist KZN in particular in their financial crisis. So my question will be, how much did you get from that meeting that you had with the treasurer to assist KZN and Mpumalanga?
Chair, through you, as I indicated to the members earlier, that perhaps there's been often a misconception. So let me maybe take a quick step back. How do provinces get money? Provinces get money through the equitable share, which is given from Treasury to provinces, and provinces then decide how they allocate according to their priorities or according to their departments. Generally, what the trend that we see, we are happy to share these statistics. The trend that we see, most provinces spend about 45% of their allocated equitable share towards education. And then how else do provinces get money? They also get money from the DBE in terms of what we call conditional grants. So conditional grants such as the school nutrition program, the EIG, which is the infrastructure grant, the MST, the math, science and technology grant, all of these grants, they get money through DBE in that way. Now, when a province finds itself in financial distress, there isn't a legal or financial instrument through which the DBE can bail out, and I use bailout in inverted commas, can bail out a government department in a province, because that department falls under the leadership of the premier and the entire province. So the point of the meeting that we had with the deputy minister, the premier, the MEC for finance, the MEC for education was one, to have a firstly to make the province understand that the solution to their financial distress can only come from their provincial coffers. There isn't an instrument that Treasury can pull to give them a boost of finances. There's nothing we can do at DBE to boost their finances. So they have to, one, get rid of their accruals. Make sure, one, that they pay their debtors. Make sure, two, that they are cleaning up their financial books, because as things stand, KwaZulu-Natal is in an unenviable position where they are paying service providers for the previous financial year for services that they need in the current financial year. So when the Honorable Shikwambana asks, how much did you get? It's a difficult question to ask, because it's not for me to allocate that money. But what I want to go and do is to advocate, to say, province, unless you do something, Honorable Premier, unless you go back with your MEC of Finance and look at your finances and see how you can essentially save the education department, you are going to have about 2 million learners in a precarious state. Already, we are suffering massive reputational damage from KwaZulu-Natal, whether it's special schools that are not being paid, whether it's children not getting scholar transport. So it is in our best interest to help that province get back on its feet. But the nature of concurrent powers means that we must negotiate. We must go and talk about how best we can help you and support you. I can't soup into a province and simply say, I'm going to take over, unless Treasury uses a Section 100. In my view, that's not necessarily where we want to go right now. So I can't quantify how much we got from that exercise, but I can tell you that from that exercise, we were able to explain to the province that their answer comes from their own provincial coffers. And I'm hoping that that engagement is what will guide Premier Nduli in making sure that the education department is afloat come next year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your clarity. Now we understand the purpose of the meeting. It was not for you to go and get funding, but it was for you to go and give financial literacy to the province of KZN, because they seems to not understand how to run their finances. So my other question is that there's a huge number of unplaced learners in the schools across the country. Do we have a reasons? Does the department know what is the main reason behind this huge number of unplaced learners?
Sorry, Honourable Member, please can you please repeat the unplaced learners question?
We have a huge
Honourable Shkwambani says there is a huge number of unplaced learners across the country. Does the department know the reason behind the numbers of unplaced learners in the schools?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for intervening there. Yeah, Honourable Member, as I said, the DG has done extensive work with the HODs in trying to obtain this data. There's a number of reasons. So, for instance, if you look at Gauteng and Western Cape, you will see that they have the most amount of unplaced learners, and that is really due to patterns, sort of economic parents who are seeking economic opportunities, things that are sometimes even beyond the sector. So those two provinces get a lot of unplaced learners for a while in the new year, because they are trying to essentially deal with late applications. So the MEC for Gauteng will tell you very easily that he may give me figures now of unplaced learners, and I may demand an action plan from him on how he will deal with that pressure. But he will tell you very easily that he's going to probably quadruple those numbers in January, because they're going to be people who are going to move to those provinces, particularly in Gauteng, where they're going to have to deal with the issue of how do they place learners. But the one thing that I can assure members is that ultimately the state has a responsibility to make sure no child is without a school. But often what we're going to face, and I'm hoping that we can get the support of the members of this committee, what we are going to see provinces struggling with is parents who are disputing where their children are placed. Then they don't necessarily accept that if, for instance, there's been a late application, the choices of where your child is placed becomes almost diminished, because the province then has to essentially give your child a space at a school. And sometimes it's inconvenient. So I'm pleading with members here, and I'm using this opportunity for Honorable Shikwambana's question to say, I do plead for the committee's support, because if parents do apply late, and there's various reasons, job applications, job opportunities that come up, and parents have to move. But sometimes a province will have a particular period during which they need to place a learner at a school. It may not necessarily be the school that the parent wants. And sometimes that becomes the issue. And sometimes parents will say, but this is so far away from where I live. But it's due to the pressures of the system in those particular provinces. And I mentioned Gauteng and Western Cape in particular, but we're starting to see this in other provinces as well. MEC Masina will tell you in Mpumalanga that if you go to the Nelspruit region, Mbombela, they've had to literally build a school next to, I think, Rob Ferreira is the other high school, literally mirroring that school by using mobile classrooms, because of the sheer pressure that metropolitan areas are facing. It's a similar case anyway. So, I mean, I use Mpumalanga as an example because it's largely a small province and no one would think that they would be experiencing that kind of pressure. But to demonstrate to you that as more South Africans are seeking economic opportunities in urban areas, so is the pressure in urban areas. The Eastern Cape, and lastly on this question, Chair, the Eastern Cape, for instance, will tell you, MEC Gade will tell you that the Eastern Cape has built schools, massive schools in rural areas that are largely now white elephants, because people are seeking economic opportunities in towns and cities. And so they now have to either think about how do we consolidate those schools, how do we create hostels for those schools. So we really, I think, just going forward, Honorable Shikwambana, in my view, going forward as a sector, we need to look at how do we plan better in infrastructure provision, to look at immigration, semigration patterns. We need to make sure that those things are interlinked. We can't be building schools outside of the data of where the pressure is. But that's the reason why you have large unplaced learners. It's simply the pressure that the system cannot sustain in particular areas. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Chair, I think this is my last question, if I'm not mistaken, the one that I'm going to ask now. My last question will be, how will the department ensure that the SGBs comply with the revised language policy, particularly in historical Africans medium schools? And before this question can be answered, also I'll take this opportunity to say, I've got a complaint from parent here in the Western Cape, in a school, primary school called Sachs Primary School in Randaport, where in 2024, she went there to get her daughter registered in the school. She was told that they are going to assist her in that process and give her the admission. And then, but they could not take her in that year because there was no sibling in that school of that particular child. They're saying, we're going to accept you next year because next year they will have accepted one of your sibling in the school. Therefore, we'll use that policy or that clause or the rule that allows us to accept siblings in an area or a school where the parent want to. And to date, that parent is even telling me that My child is not at school from 2024 up until now, and there's no hope for next year as well, because there's no communication that comes from the department and also that comes directly from the school. How are we dealing with such issues, particularly of admission here in the Western Cape? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Ndlebe to come in on how we are equipping provinces and SGBs to dealing with sections 4 and 5, because that is something that we've been undertaking. Honorable Ndlebe. Mr. Ndlebe, over to you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chairperson. The presentation that Ms. Geyer gave indicated movement in terms of the admission policies and the language policies that we have been working on. We have targeted former Madisi schools as a priority, not for any other reason, but for the reason that that is where multilingualism communities are. And we have just targeted them and selected all these former Madisi schools and started working with them to change exactly what Honorable Shikwambani is saying, that we were picking up what we found to be discriminatory practices in the language and admission processes, and we were picking up anything that exclude other learners from coming in and ensure that these schools then get open to other languages. And you'll see in the report that we gave even stats, we're showing that there has been success in opening up a lot of classes for other language groups, especially English in some. So the process that we're dealing with is the process of engaging with those schools that we found to have probably unfavorable type of policies that are against our BELA Act. Why we do that, we are happy that we haven't even written to a particular school to instruct it and to inform it about how different their admission policy is, because all of them are working with our circuit managers and we are agreeing to change that. So the process that we have begun is a process that we're going to continue with. The list that we promised to give, which I believe we have sent it out, about admission coordinators in the country, in all provinces, including the DBE. It's the same admission list of coordinators that we need to engage. It's unfortunate to hear that there's a child that has been at home since 2024. It doesn't happen in the department. There's no child that spends the whole year without being at school. So we'll request that we use those avenues. The contact details that we've given you are very comprehensive. They didn't leave a number out. And if they have to be escalated, then they get escalated to the DBE, to DG, and even to the minister. But we do deal with these issues as and when they are reported to us. So parents must never feel they are left alone. So thanks, Minister.
Thank you. We are moving to Honorable Jordan.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you very much also for this approach. I think it's assisting us to receive real-time responses. Chairperson, Honorable Minister and the Department, greetings. Thank you for the presentation and the responses given so far. My first question relates to infrastructure. When we look at the provincial dashboard slides, there are discrepancies in the data given, by the way, not only with regards to infrastructure, but also other topics. But for now, I will focus on the infrastructure issue. With regards to schools without grade R classes. In the Eastern Cape, for example, in the one table, it can be seen that the Eastern Cape has 83 schools without grade R classes, but then later on in the same slide, it stated that 2,734 schools don't have grade R classes. Similarly, then in the Free State, there are 572 schools without grade R classes. In Gauteng, there are 22. In KZN, 302. And in the Northern Cape, it's outlined that only 1% of schools are offering grade R. Now, Chair, my question is whether this is a problem with provincial reporting when it comes to statistics and data, looking at these slides, or if this is actually a true reflection. If so, what's the reason for the discrepancy in data when it comes to actually getting a clear picture on how many schools are without grade R classes, in other words, infrastructure-wise, not ready to actually offer grade R? And then if we're saying, for example, 100% are offering grade R, but we don't, in Gauteng, for example, but we don't have 22 schools without grade R classes, then what are those 22 schools doing with their grade R kids? Are they teaching them under the trees, or what's happening to them? Thanks.
Minister, can we get a response?
Chair, can I read the response?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Jordan, there are schools without grade R classes. Grade R is offered in the ECD centers. And the intention is to mainstream grade R to primary schools. But you do get instances where grade R is provided for in the ECD centers. Some are part of the primary schools, the extension of the primary schools, which are called preparatory school or theater school. In other instances, you find that they are private, but they also provide for grade R. I'll ask Ms. Geya if they want to add, and Mr. Ndlebe to that one. But that's what we got from provinces. There's nothing wrong with that data. We took it to HEDCOM. We also took it to Council of Education Ministers. So what we are giving you is what has been approved by provinces. Ms. Geya, Mr. Ndlebe, do you want to add?
DG, if I may come in.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
So, Honorable Chairperson, it's correct what DG is explaining. The misalignment of the figures that the Honorable Member is picking up is because the infrastructure within the school is not yet finalized. Those buildings will be done. And whilst they are building the infrastructure to accommodate for grade R at the rest of the primary schools in the country, the agreement that we have is that the ECD centers where these learners are currently housed will remain there until they are able to transfer seamlessly into the neighboring primary school where they are supposed to go. So that's how the provinces have provided the information and how we will then monitor the movement from the ECD center over to the primary school. Thank you.
I've got bottles in the house. I will never touch it until there's someone who comes and I open a bottle.
Can we not hear?
Stop the bottles, Date.
Can we stop hearing about the bottles? We will come to the house, Honorable Shkwambana, so they can open
Keep
the
them
bottles.
safe, though. Keep them
But
safe.
for
though.
now, we're in a meeting. Can you please stop with the bottles?
Apology, comrade.
Tugela mabhotile ndata.
Honorable Jordan, continue.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. At least we have confirmation that Honorable Shikwambana doesn't open them until someone comes. So we are happy to know that he's taken this meeting without any bottles. Chairperson, thank you very much, DG and Ms. Geya, for that response. Considering that, then we're now, it's confirmed that the Northern Cape has only 1% of schools that are actually offering grade R. Is the department then saying that all other instances of grade R provision is happening at ECD centres. That's a follow-up, if that can be allowed, Chair.
That is the second question.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So, Honourable Member, yes, currently you will know that ECD centres do offer grade R. And with the passing and implementation plan now of BELA that will allow for ECD to be offered in primary schools going forward in the future, that's where grade R will start, but it's a process because not all the primary schools currently offer grade R classes. The reason they don't offer the grade R classes is because in terms of the infrastructure plan and how this grade R classes would be built, it's a process. So whilst that is happening, the arrangement we have is that they will stay in the ECD centres and they will then move over once the facilities are available and built. And so they will, we'll straddle between the two, and the arrangement that we have made as well in the provinces, the materials, the LTSM materials that we provide as a country, across nationally to all these grade R learners will also be provided to the ECD centres. And so we will have to ensure that what was ordered, those that must go now to the ECD centres, it goes there. So they have the same opportunities, the same curriculum they follow, the same support that is given. The only difference is that they're not housed in the primary schools yet because the accommodation hasn't been built yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chairperson, my next question relates to the provision of the National School Nutrition Programme. And on the dashboard slides of provinces, it's indicated that by 15 January in all provinces feeding had commenced. And though this may be true in some areas of the province, while not in others, I find this to be actually a bit, this information to be a bit misleading without the indication of when the last schools in the province were actually commencing with the program at the beginning of this year. Because you might recall in some provinces, and I think Honourable Dr. Christians even mentioned that hostels closed in the Northern Capes and sent the kids home because of delays in the provision of the NSNP. So it's not entirely true that by 15 January in all provinces, all schools had commenced with the program. What assurance do we have that this will not be the case in 2026 and that NSNP provision for all learners, including for grade R, also considering early appointment and payment of service providers, will not be a problem in 2026?
Chairperson, hopefully I'm now fully back without any further interruptions. Chair, the Honourable Member, Honourable Jordan, raises an important point. The NSNP is one of our largest budget line items, we're spending about 10 billion rand a year to try and feed about 9.7 million learners in a year. And really, the South African government's view is that no child can go to school on a hungry stomach, and that no teaching can really happen when children are hungry. And so part of the reason why we've undertaken and we've updated and we've mentioned this to the committee. Part of the reason why we're wanting to revamp or perhaps update the school nutrition program, the way in which it's implemented, is to avoid the very thing that the Honourable Member is raising, where there are instances where there are delays in service provider payments, where there are delays in the delivery of food. It's inexcusable, Honourable Member, that should happen. It's inexcusable that schools should not be getting their allotment. For many of these children, that is their one and only meal for that day. And so, provinces have to make sure that that money is not used for anything else other than the school nutrition, and that their processes are thorough in a sense where how as the committee would know, we are seeking to unify the process of school nutrition, but only starting from 2027, because of course provinces have already done their 3-year contracts with NSNP providers. So we can't essentially get out of those contracts at the moment. But from 2027, we are wanting to guide provinces on how best to make sure that the leakages in the system, whether it is the lack of delivery, whether it is corruption, or we've seen horrible stories of principals using money that has been allocated to schools for their own personal use, and so we are really working hard to try and I think foolproof the system, and so I think the commitment I think we are making here today is to say, one, we want to make sure that the school nutrition program works effectively as possible, and that's why we've undertaken to revamp how it is done currently, because we still are not convinced and satisfied, as certainly I'm not satisfied, that that all monies that are meant for school nutrition are going to school nutrition as they should, and so that's why we've undertaken the process to relook at how we roll out the process. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Jordan, your last question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. My last question relates to funding. Now, it's previously been reported, and I can only recall the demand in one province, but that the Western Cape mentioned that around 6 billion will be required to actually, in 3 years' time, to actually roll out grade R efficiently, especially when it comes to provision of classrooms, building classrooms, providing furniture, funding teacher qualifications, and so on. But I'm pleased to hear that it's recently been announced 496 million rand funding package to support ECD will be expensed in poor communities. And in addition to that, we've also heard today that there is agreements with UNISA, there is provision through ETDP CETA, particularly relating to teacher qualifications and so on. My question is, how will the funding package work? What are the criteria and what measurable impact is expected from this funding package when it comes to ECD and also relating to grade R, I suppose, in poor communities?
Ms. Gale?
Thank you very much, Minister. So the way in which, so there are two bits of funding that's there. The one is money that is part of the conditional grant that we currently have, and the criteria is set for that. I think Dr. Kotze or Ms. Manona can just go through the DORA rules in terms of the criteria for the conditional grant and how that is dispersed. And that will then accommodate for the number of learners. There's a formula that they use once the school is registered and receives the allocation, the grant money. But the second area that will, I think, bring about the relief specifically for grade R and how we get additional money there is the additional amount of money that the Treasury has now agreed to make available for grade R, and that will be starting from 1 April in 2026. And as Minister earlier on indicated in our opening remarks, we will need to sit with the provinces. There is 870 million additional funding that will come into grade R specifically, that the Treasury has just provided to assist us in terms of the implementation of grade R. And we still have to meet with the Treasury to work out the details of the specifics of exactly how this will uniformly be used in provinces, so that we don't start in different places on different areas of what we are going to use the money for. Because what the Treasury intends to do going forward is they will then allocate in the outer years an amount for the implementation of grade R as a specific amount to build on this amount that we're getting in the first year. And so uniformity then would be very important, so that we can, all support the same line functions. For instance, if we agree that the money that will come in for the 870 million will be used for additional resource materials, or perhaps, will be pumped into infrastructure to ensure that we boost the building projects within the schools for it to happen faster, that needs to be decided so that all provinces follow the same protocol of what they're going to use the money for. But that's the good news that we recently got around the grade R funding. And we will soon finalize with Treasury around, the line specifics of that funding and how it will be used. Thank you very much. I don't know if Dr. Kotze or Ms. Manona would like to come in, just to explain the DORA rules on the conditional grant.
Thank you, Ms. Gaya and honourable members. I think the question related to the 496 million rand Education Outcomes Fund that was launched yesterday. And that is a very unique, innovative financing mechanism where we're co-funding with the private sector and with donors to specifically focus on expanding access and improving quality. It's a results-based financing instrument, so we are specifically paying on results, and the results that we're looking for is more children accessing ECD programs are providing higher quality services, and child outcomes as measured by the early learning outcome measure improving. And that will be a 3-year project happening in 3 provinces, and yes, it's specifically focusing on those outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next honourable member is Honourable van der Walt. Honourable van der Walt. Okay, let's move to Honourable. Oh, okay.
My apology. Chairperson, thank you. My question would go first to the BELA Act, and specifically to Section 5, which we know has been quite an issue and eventually passed on the language policy to schools. So I don't really have a question technically, but I wanted to know if it is possible that during this appearance before the committee in January, if the department can then also, the provinces, I beg your pardon, can also come and explain in an update per province how have they implemented this part of the Act, as it is now over a year, basically, when we signed off on that Act, and then we know the regulations came afterwards. So I think we need an update in the portfolio. And Chair, if you will allow me to add to that, on languages, to also maybe come and talk to us about the implementation of the Funda Mpumeleli National Survey funds, which makes it possible to track progress in all languages nationally and provincially, so that we can get a report on that. I think it's very important, as it is the beginning of the new academic year. That's my first question, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honourable van der Walt, wait. Honourable van der Walt, are you asking this question to us? Because we can invite provinces. Can I propose that we shelve that question for when we discuss our next term program, because that is our prerogative. If we want to invite provinces to update us, we can do that. That just is a matter of programming on our part. So I think.
May I just respond? Earlier today, there was a question about the possibility of the provinces to appear, and the DG responded, yes, there can be early meetings early January on reporting to the committee. So I would like this to be included into that specific, not separately.
No, it's not a separate issue, Honorable van der Walt. My argument is we can summon the provinces, all of them, to come and give us an update on all issues or any other issue on specifically this issue. So it's a matter of programming on our part. And if you are being specific to say in January, it's a matter of a program that we adopt, which I did say when I started the meeting. We are going to have an opportunity to discuss our program, so that we can decide what we want to come first, what we want to listen to in the coming year. So I am just saying that one, can we reserve this one for when we discuss our programming? Because provinces, by law, we can summon them, they can come. But the issue is the programming. It's us, when do we summon them? So I'm saying let's reserve that for our own programming process. When we discuss when we're having what, then we can then discuss this proposal.
Chair, I gladly accept, as long as it's early the year when the academic year begins. Thank you very much. My second question, Chairperson, is on the grade R, let's say practitioners or teachers, that is now formally part of the schooling system. I'd just like to know on the qualifications, because I know they have the qualifications needed to be it, and I saw there was a proposal that it's been done through UNISA, or a higher certificate for education, the HC8. Which is basically a bridging course prior to doing the B8 degree. So can I ask if we have anything available on that, or will that also be given to the committee early in the next year, so we can see what the status quo actually on this important phase of education is regarding qualifications? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Abutawi, please come in.
Thank you, Minister. Is the question whether we will be able to provide an update to the committee early in the year? Or did I miss the question, Minister? Apology. If that's the question, the answer is definitely yes. We will be updating the committee on an ongoing basis regarding progress in this regard, unless if I misunderstood the question. Thank you, Minister.
Honorable van der Walt, have we answered your question?
Through you, Chairperson, yes, I think, but also we are very keen, because this is a huge new phase for basic education, as we can get that status of qualifications, those who has it and those are in the process between the two qualifications mentioned ASAP in the new year. I'm satisfied, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable van der Walt, are you fine?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, with the questions, are you fine with your questions?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Mkhize.
Hello, everyone. Greetings, honorables, the TPE officials, the minister, and I didn't hear anybody mentioning the TM today. Minister, I think I must applaud you, one, for your attendance. It has changed since we have really requested you to give us more time. I think there's improvement there. One must applaud. on that one. And secondly, for your effort to try to substantively respond to the questions. I've been listening and I really could pick up that you are trying your best to provide answers. That must be applauded. And thirdly, the good sign of you trying to prepare a little bit more, as we once requested that you do better in terms of preparations when you come to present. Today we saw the dashboards and everything. It seems now you are really moving towards sophistication that is required for us to deal with the monstrous challenges in front of us. So that was just on a positive note. I'm still waiting for your response, Minister, on the letter that I sent you on the 8th of August. I think you'll be able to say something about it, but you'll see that my 4 questions, which could really shorten our interaction, can be shorter than anybody else in this meeting if we just go straight to the point. But they are all more concerned about the same issues that are addressed by the letter that I sent to you on the 8th of October, the issues of baselines and performance, but now the context is BELA. First question is, it can't be a yes or no kind of an answer. Has any assessment been made to measure the impact of poor school infrastructure in relation to access to schools for BELA? Because the issue of admission also speaks to access. We have no schools, no classes, as we have seen in the report. Have you done any scientific measurement, implemented any scientific measurement of the impact thereof, the dilapidated school infrastructure state, how it would impact BELA implementation, looking at issues of access to school? If yes, what impact has been established and what remedial plans are being implemented? That's question 1.
So, sorry, Chair. So, Honourable Mkhize, the question. Thank you very much for your comments. So, with regards to the BELA implementation, if I can just understand that correctly, so that I can answer you properly.
Yeah, I'm asking if there has been any assessment done to evaluate the impact of dilapidated school infrastructure on the BELA Act implementation, looking at issues of access to school. Because if there's no school, there are no classes, there'll be no access. Have you measured that? If yes, what impact we have established, what remedial action plans are put in place?
Yeah. Okay. I understand now. I understand now. So, look. I mean, I think the reality is that infrastructure plays a crucial role in access to education, generally, and this is not a new figure. We have often stated in this committee and in the NCOP that. We have about 140 billion rand worth of backlog of infrastructure across the country, all 9 provinces. And so one of the things that we are trying to do is to, one, look at blended financing. How do we get Treasury and Infrastructure South Africa to work with us to try and deliver infrastructure at a far more accelerated rate? Because obviously we can't just sit and say we need 140 billion rand. It's not coming. It's never going to come. The state doesn't have that kind of money. And so we have to look at innovative ways in which we can raise capital for some of these things. So there's some work that we are doing, that we are experimenting, for instance, and piloting in the Northern Cape and I think in the Eastern Cape with Infrastructure South Africa to try and see how we do blended financing with private sector funds, public sector funds, and how we best raise money to basically try and plug the infrastructure gap. But let me make an example of why I think blended financing is probably the best way, or the best way in which we can proceed. One, I think, if one looks at the announcement we made yesterday around 496 million rand grant or fund for early learning programs. I mean, that is a form of a blended financing, because you are the state put up 100 million in the first, second, and third year. Philanthropic and NGO partners put up the rest. So the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, you are right. infrastructure does impede on access, and it does impede on quality. And the more we are continuously on the back foot when it comes to infrastructure provision, the more we are going to be dealing with how it affects outcomes. When you say, have we done, I'm assuming, if I've come to understand you better now, Honorable Mkhize, you are somebody who enjoys empirical evidence. If you are asking how we have looked at how infrastructure impacts on access in terms of a study, there isn't a quantifiable number that I can say to you, this is how it deteriorates when there isn't infrastructure. I don't think that exists. I mean, the DG can come in and just confirm. But I can just say to you that we are not sitting back and saying infrastructure is a problem. We are looking at innovative ways and how we can raise capital funds for us to be able to bridge the gap for infrastructure. In terms of how it affects how the BELA Act is implemented, I think the big issue there becomes the issue of grade R additional classrooms. And that's why Ms. Gare, and I would rather come back to the committee with a solidified response from once our engagement with the Treasury have happened in terms of how we can unlock further funds to be able to plug the gaps. As Ms. Gare explained, not all grade R provision is provided in schools. And if we're saying grade R is compulsory, we need to make sure that it is plugged within a school. And so as infrastructure relates to BELA specifically, I think it would relate to the provision of compulsory grade R in schools, and that is also a gap that we still need to resolve, and that's part of our engagements with the Treasury to try and see how best we can unlock some of the available funds we may have to assist provinces in being able to build those additional classrooms, to be able to plug 2, 3, 4 grade R classrooms at every primary school. DG, anything else on your side in this infrastructure question, which I think is an important one?
So what we're getting is that there is no impact evaluation.
Yeah, so I was answered. Yes.
That has been done. There's never been any, so they can't tell you what the outcomes of that impact evaluation assessment was, because there hasn't been any yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
the answer sufficed.
The next question. Yes.
The answer sufficed, Minister.
Yeah. I think we can move to the next question.
So just to thank you, Minister, for trying your best again to answer. I appreciate that. But I just want to say, looking at the monstrous challenges in front of us, Minister, we really have to sophisticate. And part of sophistication is doing that proactive assessment. So we know the challenge in front of us. We are not pinning you down to solving problems if you don't have answers right now or don't have monies, which is a separate discussion, of course, with 150 million rands invested in so-called national dialogue, but if there are substantive justifications of not having funds, I think this committee doesn't plan to pin you down on things you can't do. But honesty is important. So recommendation moving forward, I think the committee will have to consider whether you are really needed to do that assessment, and so that you can proactively see how things will look like with the current state if it doesn't change. Second question, which could be a very short as well, Minister. Why the introduction of African languages remains at 55 schools nationally? And are there any plans to upscale that? Because we want to see impact as soon as possible. And if there are plans, what impact are you measuring so far on that escalation plan?
Sorry, Honorable Mkhize, the plan pertains to?
The introduction of African languages
remains at 55 schools nationally.
Yes. So the numbers in terms of your presentations are low.
And how will it be upscaled over the remaining period? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Understood. Look, Honorable Mkhize, a point well made, because as Honorable van der Walt in her earlier question was asking about our Funda Uphumelele study survey, that survey makes it quite clear that, in fact, African languages and our languages and our home languages are not a hindrance to literacy. In fact, they are a useful lever. And so, as we are dealing with the issue of a literacy crisis in South Africa, we have to understand that our languages are quite important in resolving that. So we now have empirical evidence. Frankly, there's nothing that impedes us from being able to scale up this kind of work. I was quite proud of the team. We've, for the first time this year, rolled out bilingual exams for grade 4s and 5s in mathematics and science this year. And we've got indicators in our APP, Honorable Mkhize, that really force us to try and make sure that our African languages are offered in our schools as much as possible. Yes, this is obviously something that it has to be in somewhat organic as per the legislation says, but it's not only a DBE indicator. The president himself made it clear that mother tongue based bilingual education is not just a nice to have, but it's an imperative when it comes to using that as a tool to deal with the literacy crisis. So I can assure you, at least on my side, that it's something that I'm pushing the team hard on to make sure that, for instance, the exams I'm talking about, the bilingual exams that I'm talking about, were rolled out in over 11,000 schools around the country for grade 4s and 5s. So yes, it's a lot slower than we want. But we are certain to conscientize provinces that the progress is going to accelerate a lot more. And lastly, I think the rollout of LTSM that takes care of the bilingual aspect is going to be quite important, because ultimately you can't just be advocating for mother tongue based bilingual education, but you've got to put your money where your mouth is, and you've got to make sure that schools have got the material to roll this out. So the point I'm making is that yes, the numbers are quite low, but I think part of the reason is because we are starting out, but we are understanding that now this is an urgency, because this is one of the levers in which we're going to use to basically deal with our literacy crisis. So we are going to be ramping up our efforts. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to, on this one, to ask that we paint by numbers, Minister, which will literally mean that we speak to specific numbers. Taking maybe 55 as a baseline, for instance, which I don't like. I don't like to use smaller targets as a baseline of improvement. But if you could accept it as baseline, moving forward, have a clear plan with numbers, which shows how far do we go from 55 to measure our improvement on it. I'll follow up on this one, plus the first point, Minister, every time we speak on the BELA implementation. Third point, is there a plan to address the provincial inequalities in relation to BELA implementation this time? How is it being implemented, with what a result at this point? We know that there are provincial inequalities, therefore BELA implementation will be affected accordingly. So just to know, how are we dealing with those inequalities as far as it relates to admission and access to school and other related requirements for effective BELA implementation? So what is being done to implement, and what results being measured so far?
Thanks, sir. Look, I mean, as I'm going to bring in Mr. Ndebe quickly here, but for us, I mean, I think with each province, I mean, as you say, yes, of course there are inequalities within provinces, but they really shouldn't be any disparities in terms of being able to implement the legislation, because legislation is binding on all of us, regardless of what the provincial financial baseline may be. That the truth of the matter is that all provinces are bound by provisions of the South African Schools Act as amended by the BELA Act. So the interventions we were talking to earlier about how we've supported schools, SGBs, and provinces, those things are the ones that are going to affect how the legislation is actually implemented. And our support mechanisms that doesn't look at the disparities between provinces. We're going into each and every district. There's 75 districts across the country. We're going into every district, making sure that we're supporting SGBs in schools in implementing provisions of the Act. We can't be allowed to not do that because there are disparities or inequalities amongst provinces. That is besides the point. The point is that the legislation is binding to us all. So we have to make sure that our support processes it basically is afforded to everybody, and we've been trying very hard to work through a district and a circuit level and a school level support mechanism. So the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think that there are disparities, so to speak, except that at least our support package has been equal across the provinces.
Thank you, Minister. I'll just on that one ask you to ensure that perhaps if we engage maybe next time, we try to quantify your level of effort, because it was like we are working very hard. We did all we can. We are trying to enforce. They do not give a practical, empirical evidence for us to say, yes, we are going towards the right direction. But I do accept at this point in time, maybe. But moving forward, just to say, how do you quantify your own level of effort measured against process and output? If you say we've tried very hard, what do you mean? What was the process and what are tangible outcomes from that trying hard? But I'm going to leave it for now, Minister, because the aim is not to complicate, but to guide a little bit as we move forward.
Honorable you can ask your last question.
Sorry, okay. Chair. Perhaps I can ask Mr. Ndlebe to come in here as the line function head on some of what we've done.
Mr. Ndlebe, you can come in when you're responding to the last question. You can then come in and enhance the response.
Okay.
On the specific.
Chair, overriding the minister, but let's let it go for now. Last question.
Honorable Mkhize, I don't understand. What do you mean?
I'm going to my last question, Chair.
Okay, go to your last question.
Minister, have you measured progress, limitations, and opportunities of BELA implementation in rural, farm, and township communities? If yes, please share. The reason why I'm asking this question, Minister, it's because there's history and evidence of neglecting schools in these communities, the rural, the farm, and the township. So that's why I'm asking, have you measured progress, limitations, and opportunities of BELA implementation? Have you done any scientific or perhaps empirical process to do proper measurement?
I'll defer to Mr. Ndlebe. He can answer the previous question as well.
Thank you very much, Minister. The efforts that we talk about here is to try and ensure a common understanding of the implementation of the BELA Act. We are on the ground to ensure that the interpretation is the same throughout the country, whether in rural or in urban schools. And the efforts that we're putting is that of ensuring that our foot soldiers in districts in particular are the ones that are visible down there to ensure this common understanding that we're talking about. It's more about the implementation of what the BELA Act it's indicating. One thing that we have done just last week was to bring in all SGB associations and those who want to be members of SGBs, including SGB association themselves nationally, just to put on the agenda what is it that we need to do, all of us, to make SGB effective. Now, it is the effectiveness of SGBs in those rural areas that are going to ensure.
Can I come in, Chair, because I feel there's deviation from my question.
No. Let's allow Mr. Ndlebe to finish. Honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson. I thought the question was, what effort are we putting that we're saying we're working hard? And that's the response that we're giving, that the major gap that we have noticed especially in rural areas, it's an understanding of the law, the understanding of how SGBs work. And we're saying if we can close that gap between rural and urban schools in the functioning of SGBs, half of our battles will be won. And the effort that we're putting is to bring all the people that have a say in governance, the stakeholders that we have, which include unions, by the way, because teachers who serve in the SGBs are affiliates of unions, where we have parents and we have other stakeholders. Chairperson, we might refer you back to the previous meetings where we were talking about abuses and violence and statutory rapes and all those. These are things that the BELA Act wants us to really deal with and deal with them effectively. And we can only survive if SGBs are thoroughly trained and are thoroughly knowledgeable about these issues. So we're putting structures all over the country to arrest that type of a situation. And that is our baseline. So when we come and report back, we will tell you exactly who we worked with, what achievement we have made, and what changes we're beginning to see on the ground. And that is the role that we're playing at the moment, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlebe. Honorable Ngobeni.
Chair, so my question is forfeited, right? Was not answered.
No. You were not responded to.
Yes, as I said, Chair, that is deviation from my question, and you overruled me. You allowed Mr. Ndlebe to go astray.
No. It was not allowing Mr. Ndlebe to go astray, Honorable Mkhize. You can't, when a person is still responding, you assume that they're not going to completely respond to you. You must allow them to finish. Now that they've finished, you can then say, I was not responded to.
I was not responded to, sir.
Yes, so do repeat the question. But it can't be that when people are still responding and say, not responding.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Ndlebe or Minister, have you measured progress, limitations, and opportunities of BELA implementation in rural, farm, and township communities? If yes, please share.
So, Mr. Ndlebe, outline the limitations, the opportunities in rural areas as it pertains to the implementation of the BELA Act. I did hear you mentioning limitations, but maybe just, I don't know, clarify them more.
Chairperson, I've indicated that the limitation is the understanding of the roles that we play in ensuring effective implementation of the Act. And these are the limitations and the gaps that we're trying to close. And we're saying if we can have proper training, it will limit this limitation of common implementation of the Act itself. And we were indicating the steps that we're doing to close that. Then if the question is about a scientific verification of how many of these rural schools are still struggling with the implementation of the Act, then it is something else. But I'm saying we're putting systems in the department. For example, those rural schools belong to a directorate that focuses on that, which is rural education. And they are also working on a daily basis with those rural schools to make sure that they are also in line with the rest of the country in terms of the implementation. And it becomes a challenge, Chairperson, when we say the implementation of the Act, as if there is a specific thing that needs to be done, and then we will say the Act has been implemented, because it covers a whole range of areas. But we're saying with proper education, with proper training, people will then do what is expected of them, and then the department will have to play that monitoring and supporting role, which is another aspect that we're strengthening, just to have accountability from districts and provinces in how they are supporting and holding schools accountable. So these are systems that we're putting in place, Chairperson, and which we will be able to report what we have done and how we're making them account. I think the minister might be in a better position to inform you of how many set of questions she has put to the department as a reporting tool on a regular basis on the activities that provinces and districts need to do and report back, which is very comprehensive. So we are dealing with those things, Chairperson. If we could be given an opportunity then to indicate exactly what we did and how we hope it is going to work and the outcome thereof. Thanks, Chairperson.
Granted.
Okay, Honorable Ngobeni.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon to all of the colleagues on the platform. I think that one has come at a time when most of the issues have been ventilated, but I do want to just clarify for my own sake. I did hear that the question was somewhat asked, but there's a caveat with regards to the Second Children's Amendment Bill that was published only in English. And I heard that we were talking about, of course, a second language being Afrikaans. I want to understand whether the department has considered or whether it has been done that Braille or other accessible language versions, have been implemented or have been undertaken, and without the SCIA or explanatory memorandum, how the department believes that this meets the constitutional standard for meaningful public participation. I just want to get a sense. I know that it was kind of touched on earlier, but I want to just extend it by asking about other accessible versions. That's my first question. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I mean, I think when Honorable Shigwamba, and I think it was who asked this question, I said the limitation that the department has is that once a piece of legislation has been published in a particular language, the regulations that then follow have to follow the prescriptions of those languages. So the BELA Act, as we know it, was published in English and in Afrikaans, and therefore the regulations have to then be in English and Afrikaans. But then I extended to say, I take the point that the honorable members are making that says there are 12 official languages in South Africa. Surely, when we are drafting legislation, we should look at how accessible is the language in which we draft legislation generally to the rest of the South African populace, particularly considering the fact that the majority of South Africans may not speak those two languages. And I said to the members that I take the point, and it's one that is not limited to just DBE, but it is a point that I think as the executive and as lawmakers in Parliament, that we should look at how do we extend language services to other people, to the majority of South Africans when we're drafting the legislation. In terms of the regs as things stand, we are limited with what we can do, but I think the point has been well made that we have to think about these things carefully and the broader impact and the implication that they may have when we're saying we're doing public participation, but then we don't think about how we extend language services to other people. So it's a point that is well made, and a point and a criticism that I think as a member of the executive that I take. Thank you.
Come back. Thank you, Chairperson. No, I think the response of the minister is well noted, but I think with regards to access to services such as Braille, and particularly for people who are deaf and blind and living with disability, I think, or people with disability, I beg your pardon, I think that extends even far greater than just the language issue. And I'm hoping that as the minister has, tried to explain, is that, this is going to be remedied, because it simply means that those people don't have the necessary access. Because if some people may not understand fully the English language, but at least they can read, and they are able to have somebody extend to them that level of access. And I think that's the point that I really wanted to make. The second question that I wanted to ask is on the curriculum restrictions and parental choice. I think this has also been quite a contentious issue with regards to particularly curriculum diversity within ECD. I just want to understand, how will this not narrow the developmental pipeline into grade R? I mean, this has been spoken about at length, and so I just want to get clarity on that, whether the parental choice and the constitutional rights of the very same parent, when South Africa is bound by international conventions that explicitly protect parental choice and educational pluralism. I just want to understand how that will not narrow the developmental pipeline into grade R.
Chair, can I please ask Honourable Ngobeni to just explain for me again? Sorry, it has been a long morning. So I understand the part about sort of parental responsibility and input in the curriculum development, but if I can just have it explained so that I can know either if I have the capacity to respond, if I need to refer to somebody else. If Honourable Ngobeni doesn't mind, please repeating the question so I can be clear. Chair?
Honorable Ngobeni, can you just repeat the question?
Oh, I apologize. I was on mute. I apologize. Colleagues. Minister was saying, how does the department justify restricting curriculum diversity in ECD when our country is bound by international conventions that explicitly protect parental choice and educational pluralism? And how will this not narrow the developmental pipeline into grade R?
Okay, understood. Thank you, Honourable Ngobeni. DG, would you come in here, please? I think that perhaps you can, either DG or Dr. Kotze, please. Mr. Mweli?
Minister, I can perhaps step in here,
yes,
if that would be helpful.
Yes, please. Thanks, Dr. Kotze.
So the National Curriculum Framework for Children from Birth to 4 is a curriculum framework. So what that entails is that different ECD programs can have their own specific day-to-day programs and curricula, but it needs to be aligned with the early learning developmental areas that's specified in the National Curriculum Framework. And what we're intending to do through putting it in legislative footing is to say that we are rapidly expanding access. We want as many ECD programs as possible because we need to get spaces for our children. But we also need to have a quality measure. We don't just want spaces without quality. And that is why we're putting this National Curriculum Framework as on the statutory footing to say that if an ECD program opens, whatever program they deliver needs to at least meet the minimum standards that sits in our curriculum framework. So we're allowing them that freedom to follow, whether it's Montessori, Reggio Emilia, or any of the other programs that they decide, as long as that program they follow align with our early learning developmental areas and the specific standards that we're putting forward in the National Curriculum Framework. So I think the intention is to allow flexibility, allow for contextually relevant programs, as long as it is at the quality that we're specifying as the national government.
Thanks, Dr. Kotze.
Honorable Ngobeni, your third question.
Am I still audible?
Yes, am I still Honorable Ngobeni?
Thank you. This will be my third and final. Thank you very much. This will be my third and final question because I think some of the issues I wanted to raise have been ventilated. But I want to get a clarity on this one with relation to specific data fields for grade R admissions. Does the department intend to collect under the NEIS? And how do these comply with POPIA as necessity and proportionality requirements?
The NEIS, Honorable Ngobeni?
Yes.
Sorry, do you mind the abbreviation? I don't quite know it. What does the NEIS stand for, ma'am?
Honorable Ngobeni? I think we might have lost Honorable Ngobeni on the platform.
Yeah. So, Chair, I do apologize. I'm not entirely familiar with what the NEIS is. I don't know if any of the colleagues on the call are, but to Honorable Ngobeni's other broader question around, are you intending on collecting grade R data? Obviously, we have to be, because now grade R is compulsory school going age. So we have to collect that in terms of what the South African Constitution expects us to do. And as I indicated in my opening remarks, Chair, that this is a forever moving target. In some instances, parents may only be taking their kids to grade R in the next year. And so these figures are shifting consistently. But what we have committed on doing, and I think the DG even indicated earlier, that we can certainly have a meeting with the PC early in the year to give you a snapshot of where we are and where the pressures are. In terms of compliance with the POPI Act, I think the data that we collect for children of school going age is something that is protected within our records, but we are obviously required to take that data from school, children's ID numbers and the like. So it's information that we have to collect nonetheless. And so that has always been compliant with POPI, and that we haven't, there has never been a data breach or the selling of data of children's data in any case. So yes, we are collecting that data, but as I said, we will be consistently having to update the committee where we are with those admissions. Thanks. Chairperson.
Am I back?
You are back, Honorable Ngobeni. I'm sure you were meaning the National Education Information System, right?
I said it was too late to give it to them. They must just tell the answers that coming from.
Miss Gare, please mute.
Honorable Ngobeni, can you hear us?
Information system. Use the acronym freely. My system is shaky, but yes, I wanted to just get a sense as to whether the data that will be collected through the system, is going to be also, protected. The information of the particularly ECD and learners at that level, whether that is going to be POPI compliant. And I think the minister answered, even though I lost connection, so I didn't hear the full answer. Thanks.
No, the minister did respond. I think the minister did respond to the question.
Thank you, Chair. That will be my final question.
Okay. Minister, did you want to add?
Chairperson, the meeting, but I would please beg your indulgence. I have a 1 o'clock meeting that I need to jump onto. If you would be happy with me excusing myself at this point. I know you still have questions, and so the DG and the team are still here. If the committee would be happy with me excusing myself so I can jump onto the 1 o'clock.
That's fine, Honorable Minister, but I just wanted, before you leave,
okay,
this is it's a question that you responded to, and for me it's very important. Earlier on, when we spoke about the issue of the lawmaking process and ensuring quality participation by the public, the issue of translation, and you kind of said it's a criticism that goes to all of us, and so this really, for me, it's the issues I wanted to clarify. Number one, I can tell you that the choice of language and translation in the lawmaking process, it's a choice of the executive, because the legislation does not do that. The legislature does not do that. You submit a bill to a portfolio committee of Parliament. You submit a bill as a department. So the first choice is made by the department to submit a bill in whatever languages, 2 languages, which usually you bring with a bill being in Afrikaans and English. And that is a choice of the executive. When the legislature, when Parliament goes out for public participation, and that happens with all the bills, that I can tell you for sure, because I've participated as a member of the public. Parliament translates into all the official languages, including with the BELA bill. When Parliament underwent the process of public participation, it translated the bill into all the official languages, including Braille. So it is not all the state, it's not all the organs of the state, it's the executive, it's yourselves that make this choice. And I want to show you why I am so adamant that it's a choice you're making. It is not because there is guidelines, because guidelines are not law. It's guidelines. It's a guiding thing. So if somebody guides you, and you can write to that person and say, based on the demand, on this demand, and I want to tell you why I'm saying it's a choice. If you go to your letter that you are saying it's a reason for extension and the reason for the translation, this is a letter by Equal Education, which you send us. Thank you very much, because I wanted to see what Equal Education said. Equal Education raises a very important matter that has been raised here in their letter. They say to you, and even when Equal Education says this, the department still chooses to translate into Afrikaans. They say, it's a quotation from the letter, the current approach to public participation is exclusionary. And I'm reading one paragraph, late paragraph. You can go through the entire letter. I think it's raising the same issue. It's exclusionary, a fact underscored by the decision to translate the draft regulation into Afrikaans spoken by roughly 10% of the population, while not providing translations into other official South African languages. We therefore formally call on the DPE to use this extended period to launch a robust, accessible, and dynamic public engagement. This must include a minimum translating the draft regulation into other official South African languages. They even give you in that letter their experience with the engagements they've undertaken with community members, with stakeholders, and they quote one of the community members saying, "It is so sad that it had to be Equal Education and not DPE that had to start the initiative of doing public engagements on these important regulations. DPE must do public engagement on these regulations because they play a vital role nationally and many people are not aware of them, even schools." So you are saying this very same letter is a reason for your extension as per your own presentation, which was written and submitted to you on the 15th of October. The following month, you decide as a department that no, we are going to translate this into Afrikaans, despite despite this submission, because all the 3 submissions, I went through them, and I wanted to really get a sense as to how did you really arrive at this option. And Honorable Ngobeni is correct. So I just want you to at least comment on that it is not the state. I watched court proceedings, and that is the judiciary. There's translation court proceedings. Court proceedings, they go beyond overboard to ensure that an accused or anyone, there is translation of submissions, of evidence, even of oral evidence in all 11 languages. The legislation does the same. When we are consulting on any matter, especially when it comes to bills, you can go to any public participation, you will see that there is a translation into all languages. So it's the executive and it's a choice. And I want to understand what informs this choice. After receiving this letter, couldn't you have written to the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor to say the complaint coming from the public is that the translation into Afrikaans it's exclusionary? Couldn't you have written that and said, no, we need to make sure that this process is, because you are asking for comments. So how do I comment if I am excluded from understanding the regulation? And these are ordinary majority of South Africans. So I'm saying, don't generalize it. It's not all of us who do that. So it's a choice from the executive, and I want to understand what informs this choice. That's what I wanted you to respond before you get off, Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Chair. No, I take the point, and I think I've answered it in 3 various ways already in the meeting, to say that the original sin here is that when a bill is drafted in that language, in those 2 languages, then it means that the original sin was that the publication of the BELA bill was in Afrikaans and in English. And I take your point about the translation services that Parliament goes through. And as I said to Honorable Ngobeni and Honorable Shigwambana, that for me, from this meeting, it is a criticism that is well leveled to say, do better when you are publishing things when you're wanting the public to comment, so that you can incorporate a lot more voices. And as I said, I would never shy away from a valid criticism. And for me, that is a valid criticism that has been leveled. And yes, of course, Honorable Chair, the issue of lawmaking is one that is shared by both the executive and the legislature. Once a bill has left the department, it is now and then in the hands of Parliament. But the point is well made that do better when it comes to allowing greater access to translation services. And it's certainly something, and of course, as you know, we are, under my leadership, we're probably going to have the Children's Amendment bill that is going to come to Parliament. But it's a criticism that has been well made, and I don't want to shy away from that, to say that it's well understood. Thank you.
Okay, we can excuse you, Minister.
And just lastly, Chair, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to step off. Just lastly, the Mr. Ndlebe has distributed what he calls the provincial admissions coordinators. We spoke earlier, I think it was Honorable Sharif who had asked about how the committee best deals with public queries. Mr. Brown will receive the provincial admissions coordinators so that members are able to direct parents directly to those provincial coordinators, so we can do our best to make sure that those things are resolved. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We can excuse you, Minister, just to know that I myself, I am going to write personally to the department and the Office of the Chief State Law Attorney to say the department did not respond to the concerns of the civil society. The request for extensions was not responded to. I think the only one that was responded to was additional time. But the one, especially from Equal Education, was not responded to. So you did not extend to respond to that request. The extension was for something else, because if you did not comply with that request, you can't say your reason for extension was that request. So I think that should be noted, but we can excuse you. The second thing, I think the second issue for me, it's not questions really, is to request and really to applaud, as I had said earlier, that we really do appreciate. I think I looked at the presentation of the department, and I was really happy with, for the first time, having a picture of the areas, the specific areas which has been our concern. Because when we do make laws, we make laws to address specific problems. And one of the key challenges was admission and language policies being utilized as barriers, especially in the former Model C schools. So seeing the outline from the department's presentation on the number of former Model C schools that you have in a province, the number that still utilize a single medium instruction, which is Afrikaans, the number of the schools that have added another language as a medium of instruction, and the number of schools that have also now incorporated African languages, I think that gives us a picture, and that we must appreciate. But I want to agree with the members. I think one member raised this issue to say the number of the former Model C schools that have incorporated African languages is still very low. And as per the admission of the department saying that the number is still very low, the only province that is doing well in that regard being KZN. So what we would require, so give us a breakdown for the purposes of ourselves when we do oversight, or for the purposes of members who would want to individually go do oversight. Give us a spreadsheet of the number of the remaining schools that have either incorporated another language, that still have a single medium of instruction, one medium of instruction, that have not incorporated another language, and that have not incorporated African languages. The spreadsheet must also say, this school, it's school X, they use this language as their only single medium of instruction. They've not incorporated, and these are the reasons why they've not incorporated. The reasons must be clear. It should be that it's either because of the demographics, it's either because of the SGB is still undergoing a review of the language policy. So we do need that kind of a spreadsheet with the schools that are remaining or that are outstanding in all the provinces that have not reviewed their language policies and that still maintain their, and that have not incorporated, especially those that have not incorporated African languages, so that we are able to see if their reasons are justified. Because if their reasons is demographics, then that is justified. But if it is not, then we would have to get to a bottom as to why are they not moving, because the public must feel the impact of the implementation of these amendments, because that was the intended purpose. The intended purpose of the Act was to ensure that we open access and we deal with the barriers that exist. So the public can only feel the impact if that is being done. So I think we must approach you on that. The last issue on my side is that this issue of grade R practitioners, one of the stakeholders that is on the platform, I think it's NAPTOSA, speaking about the access by these practitioners to the UNISA program, because they're saying UNISA is rejecting the application based on low, I don't know if it's low, they're saying it's low, I was reading the message, because the low APS. So you'd need to respond on that as a department on how, because when you enter into a partnership with UNISA, there ought to have been an engagement on the data that you have. So you ought to say to you would have had to say to UNISA, this is a number of practitioners we have, and the minimum level of education they have is this one. what, in terms of your program, do they qualify, or is there a need for a bridging course, for example? How do we ensure that there is access? Is there development of a bridging course? How do we ensure that that opportunity we're giving to 2,000 practitioners, these 2,000 practitioners are able to really grab that opportunity? I think that is the last question for me. But all in all, I think we should appreciate, even if it's small progress, DG, but we are moving. At least we are having a sense that we are moving in terms of the implementation of the Act. We are mostly excited about the grade R admission and the grade R, the implementation of the compulsory grade R. And of course, with the challenges and the initiatives that the department is taking to ensure that you find resources and to assist the provinces, but we are moving. And I think if we do continuously ensure that we monitor ourselves and we play greater oversight on the implementation of the amendments, I think we are going to we can move to a right direction. The last one is also, when are you submitting the 2 regulations that must be submitted to Parliament? So that's the last one for me. DG? Is the DG back in the meeting?
Yeah, I'm back with 2 gadgets.
Okay.
I am back with 2 gadgets, Chair. I'm sorry. It's raining heavily where I am. I'm in Belcom in the Free State. I'm going to ask Advocate Santi to just help us respond to the question about the possible time that will be in Parliament with the regulations that we have mentioned, Chair. Advocate Santi.
Thank you, TG. Once again, I thank you, Honorable Chair. There are also processes that we need to undertake with regard to approaching the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation for a socio-economic impact assessment certificate. And there is a possibility as well, and actually I'm yet to research about that the regulations must also be tabled before NETLEC. But it is difficult now to quantify at what stage or when will actually be presented before Parliament. Particularly the delays at the Office of the Chief Technical Advisor, in particular regarding the transmission processes. Because as I indicated in my presentation, that they need approximately 65 working days, almost 3 months, if one were to think about to finalize the transmission processes. So I won't wish to speak off the cuff and mislead the portfolio committee as to when particularly the 2 regulations be submitted to table before Parliament. Chair, thank you, TG. I'm not sure if I'm audible enough, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's the response, and thank you for your compliments. And thank you also for holding us to account. I think the Minister has indicated our appreciation of the engagement with you and honorable members. Thank you very much from our side. Over to you, Chair.
DG? In terms of the two regulations that must appear before us, Advocate, what we would appreciate.
I mean, heavily where I am.
Yeah, no, I think your network is very bad, DG. What we're saying, I think, is that please do submit to us the information, the additional information that we've requested. But what the question that has not been responded to, which I asked, was of the practitioners and the concern that has been raised by NAPTOSA on the chat in the group about access to UNISA by the practitioners because of low APS. So that has not been responded to.
Yeah, with the greatest respect, Naptosa, we meet with them regularly. Last week, the minister met with them.
DG, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. DG,
Emma has got direct, communication to us.
We can't hear you.
But I can hear you, Chair. It's raining.
Yes, but we can hear you. Can you delegate?
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, it's better now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We've totally lost the DG. Is there anybody willing to respond on this question from the department?
Yes, Chair. Rabotati here. I can respond to the question.
Yes.
So, Chairperson, we did indicate that the 2,121 number is the number that was based on those who are eligible. So there is acknowledgement that there are exclusions. But the exclusions are mainly due to lack of a metric. So I would cite largely lack of a metric, although in terms of our collective agreement, age is also another factor for exclusion. Now, in relation to those who are eligible for application, there are those who may not be eligible for direct admission into the BEd foundation phase, and it could either be due to a lower APS score or some other factor, and that is why our arrangement with UNISA is that those who cannot have direct admission into the BEd will then be eligible for registration into the certificate in higher education, which is a 1-year bridging qualification. And once they complete the 1-year bridging qualification, they can then register directly into the BEd foundation phase. We are aware also, Chairperson, that amongst those, because when we talk about people with metric, we used two terms. We said metric or metric equivalent. And we have picked up that there's a technicality around the issue of the metric equivalent, which we are picking up with UNISA, because the only metric equivalent that is recognized by public institutions is those who have your N qualifications, those who followed the technical streams. But there were other people who were regarded as being NQF level 4 equivalent, but though that equivalent is not recognized for purposes of this admission. And this includes those who have got level 4 ECD, that is not actually equivalent of a metric. So we have identified that category that is a bit of a challenge, and we have raised it with UNISA to say that can we have a discussion around this category and if there can be a waiver. So I'm not sure if that's the category that Naptosa is referring to, but we are aware that there is that small technicality that has been raised and we are dealing with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rabutape. I think what we will appreciate as the committee is for you to maybe in a written response on a breakdown of the different interventions that you are making with a different cohort of the practitioners you have. So we know about those who've got matric, those who've got an equivalent that is not recognized. Of course, you are saying you're engaging with UNISA on a possibility of a bridging course or a waiver, but then also engage to us about those who do not have any metric and those who are older in the system. So what are the possible engagements that you are having with the unions, and what are the possible avenues to empower those practitioners? Because the commitment we had from the department was that you were going to ensure that the practitioners remain in the system. But of course, we need to train them. So maybe a written response that gives that outline, but I think the response suffices. So with that said, thank you very much to the department for this session. It's our last session. We do hope that you go and have and enjoy your festive season. And we are hoping that when we do meet in January, we will be engaging on improved NSC examination results. When we do meet, when the announcement is done, we hope that we will all be celebrating and continuous improvement on the results and on the outcomes. So thank you very much, and we will see each other, or we'll meet each other January. We are going to release you as a department so that we can deal with the remaining issues.
Long live the chair and honorable members. Thank you.
Oh, so now you're audible, DG, because we've just finished.
It's rain, yeah. It's heavy with storms and hail. I'll take you
Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, can we please slide to the agenda? No, DG, bye-bye. DG, bye-bye. We can see if there's outstanding items. Okay. Do we have a set of minutes? Okay, this is a set of minutes. Honorable members, let's deal with the set of minutes of the meeting that we held, that was held on the 24th of November. It was on a virtual platform. This is a meeting where this is a meeting we had on a Monday. It was a 1-hour meeting where we're adopting the draft report on statutory rape inquiry and the reports as well of the participations that our members undertook in the 2 provinces. Any issues, any amendments, any proposed amendments on this and corrections on this set of minutes? Honorable members, any proposed amendments? Honorable Law.
No, thank you very much, Chair. About the capacity and the analysis of the minutes that one could have went through, now I wish to adopt because they are a true reflection of our meeting. Thank you.
Any seconder to the amendment to the minutes, to the adoption of these minutes?
I second, Chairperson.
Honorable Ngobeni. Okay, the minutes are adopted. We've got the second set of minutes, Mr. Brown. That is the set of the last minutes, the last meeting we had. Yes, this is a meeting where we received a briefing on the first and the second quarter performance reports. We also held this meeting virtually, and that was last week, Tuesday. Any proposed amendments? Okay, any more adoption of the minutes in the absence of any mover for the adoption, members?
Chair.
I don't see who's speaking. Honorable Mkhize.
It's Mkhize, yes. I will not stand on the way of adoption, but I want to say my concern was that in that meeting, we haven't clearly put forward our demands in terms of what are they going to do with the challenges. If I could just give one example, we have not tasked them specifically on a regular expenditure, which keeps on growing, Chair, in terms of how are they going to bring that into a stop. We listened to that problem. We have spoken strong against it, but we didn't give them a takeaway to say, perhaps come and present to us a plan that is in place to put a stop to regular expenditure. And I'm telling you, Chair, it doesn't appear in the minutes. And I want to say is the gap the committee has to close at a certain point.
Okay. With that, are you moving for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Mkhize.
Chair, Honorable Logan, I wish to move for the adoption of the minutes, Chair. Thank you very much.
Second, Chair.
Honorable Magagula seconds. The minutes are adopted. Mr. Brown, are we ready with the draft program?
Thank you, Chairperson. We have worked on a draft which we would like to share with members, but Chairperson, we have not received any framework or focus areas from the Office of the House Chairperson. Normally that would have come by now for us. That also guides the committee in its preparation for the program. Between myself, we've worked on something, but it would be unwise to share that with you now until we've looked at the focus areas and the framework from Parliament for the first term, Chairperson, and we haven't received that information as yet. But if you would like, we can take you through the draft that we've been working on. But that is completely a very, very, very working draft, Chair.
No. I think, honorable members, I had thought that we would be able to adopt this program of the next term before we close. I mean, the guidance on the focus areas from the Office of the House Chair. And at times, if we do adopt the program before we receive the guidance or the guidelines on the focus areas, it becomes a futile exercise because we're going to have to reconvene and align what we've adopted as a program with what we are directed to focus on as Parliament. So I would propose that we actually wait, Mr. Brown, to receive the focus areas. Immediately we do receive the focus areas, please do share with members. Members, we can find time when we reopen, because I don't think we are going to reconvene now anytime soon after this meeting. We can find time when we reopen to quickly adopt the program. However, there are circumstances where the Office of the House Chair would give us a time frame, a timeline to say you ought to have submitted your program by this date. So if they do give us a timeline, we will send out invitations to ministers for a special meeting just to adopt the program for the next term. I prefer that we adopt it before we close so that members are aware of what exactly is going to be happening in the next term, but I think our hands are tied. I hope that is in order, honorable members. Is that in order?
It's in order, Chair.
Okay. If that is the case, honorable members, I think I must thank all of you for a very, very long, productive, robust meeting, but also a long, productive, efficient term. And I'm wishing you all the best of the holidays. Hope you go. Honorable Mkize, is that a hand?
No, Chair, I just wanted to remind Honorable Skwamba that now is time. She must focus for sending me the location.
Order, Chair, order. I don't agree with that. Owner Skwamba was speaking about water.
So I want to wish all of you very, very blessed holidays. Let's rest. I know we won't rest, but we need to rest so that we are ready to tackle the next year. Let's be safe. Let us ensure that we process the bottles responsibly. Honorable Shikwambana, even if it's bottles of water. We wish you all the best, honorable members. I really do wish you all the best, and we will see each other when we reopen. But we will communicate if there is a need for us to convene, just even for an hour, to process our next term report. I am making a commitment that when we do that, when we do process the program, we will also engage on an approach that we all feel comfortable with as for running of our meetings. I think it's an important discussion that we'll undertake. But in terms of that program as well, we will incorporate the in-committee study groups that Honorable Ngobeni spoke about in our last meeting, where we just have sessions where we engage as a committee. But we'll also try and incorporate resolutions of the committee tracker. And we'll try and align those with the tracker of the Office of the Speaker, because the Office of the Speaker does utilize resolutions trackers. So after reports that we submit and that are debated in Parliament, the Office of the Speaker usually then writes to the executive to say, these were the resolutions of a committee. Give us an update on how far you are in implementing the resolution. So we will also engage on a resolution committee and also look at our strategic plan that we've adopted and see how are we doing in terms of implementing that plan. So thank you very much, and have the most festive, beautiful Christmas to yourselves, honorable members, and our support team. Thank you very much to our support team for being there and for ensuring that our committee is very effective. I think we are really appreciative of the support team we have. I think we've got one of the best support team as a portfolio committee of Parliament. So thank you very much, and we wish you, on behalf of the committee, we wish you a blessed Christmas. We hope you rest so that you are fresh for the upcoming year. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is adjourned.
You did very well this year, Chair. You did very well. Thank you very much. Back to you.
And recording stopped.
Mkize, we must go. We must go process those bottles there by Skwamba.
Please make sure Skwamba and the Chair sends the location.
Send the location.
I must just get better. I'm drinking pills now.
Bye everyone. Bye. Have a
Bye,
good one.
Lerato.
Bye. 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 Honorable Ngobeni. Immediately I get better, I'm calling Skwamba. You must send us a location for those bottles.